Chapter 1116 Quadruple Jackpot. Chapter 1116 Quadruple Jackpot. _ There had been over 500 elite rank trolls on the battlefield. When they all died, a golden glow enveloped everyone on the team as they all leveled up. What astonishing leveling speed! Gentle Snow was flabbergasted as she watched her experience bar rise. When she had left White River City, she was only at 74% of level 41. To bridge the gap and reach level 42, she needed to grind for at least another full day or so, yet she had risen to level 42 shortly after entering the Crying Ghost Ridge. With this leveling speed, it was definitely possible to reach level 43 by the next day. After players reached level 40, it was practically impossible to level up once a day. No one would believe this. However, although the team had killed plenty of troll warriors, the loot was pitiful, to say the least. Aside from some copper and silver coins, the 500 or so elite monsters only dropped some raw materials. Only 5 weapons and pieces of equipment dropped. Among them, 4 were level 60 common items, while the last was a piece of level 60 bronze equipment. However, Sherfone was not surprised. After reaching level 50, the drop rate for weapons and equipment decreased drastically. Only chieftain or above-ranked monsters had a slightly higher chance of dropping such items. This drop rate reduction occurred because players could begin challenging their Tier 2 class promotions after reaching level 50. After obtaining their Tier 2 class, killing elite monsters was as easy as taking candy from a baby. Tier 2 experts could solo chieftains, and even give lords a run for their money. Generally, 2 or 3 Tier 2 experts working together could easily take down a lord of the same level. Naturally, the system wouldn't give players high-level weapons and equipment so easily. Hence, past level 50, 6-man party dungeons, even in normal mode, usually had lords as the final boss. Moreover, these bosses had extremely powerful AoE skills. One mistake could easily lead to a party wipe. The same held true for Tier 2 experts. Adventurer teams and workshops that wanted to make money by selling weapons and equipment generally needed to deal with chieftains of the same level. If they wished to grind for mysterious iron equipment, at the very least, they had to deal with lord-ranked monsters. This resulted in the rise in popularity for lifestyle classes capable of producing weapons and equipment. Of course, the system also restricted such lifestyle classes by significantly increasing the production costs of weapons and equipment that were level 50 and above. As a result, even bronze weapons and equipment required many rare materials. This greatly limited the number of weapons and equipment lifestyle players could produce and protected the market from oversaturation. This team is simply ridiculous. They have 4 people capable of using large-scale destruction spells in a 20-man team. Even our adventurer team only has 2 people with such spells. Is that swordsman an NPC? He can actually overwhelm 2 level 62 lords. Sherfeng's performance had astonished the Midnight Tea Party's members. However, they weren't shocked because Sherfeng had fought 2 level 60+ lords by himself. After all, they were capable of that themselves. What truly shocked them was the overwhelming strength Sherfeng had displayed. The swordsman had managed to suppress the petrified trolls through brute force. Turtledove, help tank the petrified troll on Fire's side. Wimian, lure one away from me. Everyone else, prioritize killing the troll shamans. Sherfeng ordered after sweeping a glance over the troll shamans, who had less than half their HPs remaining. Kola, start running! Lure the troll chieftain as far away from here as possible. Don't give the shamans any chance to heal the chieftain. Understood. Kola immediately dashed in the opposite direction of the troll shamans. Seeing this, the troll chieftain chased after the escaping guardian knight. When the troll chieftain moved, the troll shamans had no choice but to follow their leader. However, they couldn't cast their heals while moving. As a result, the troll shamans couldn't heal the troll chieftain. Meanwhile, the other members on Sherfeng's team began to bombard the troll shamans. After a few moments, the troll shamans collapsed, one after another, becoming EXP for Sherfeng's team. Without the shamans' heals, the petrified trolls became a lot easier to deal with. Don't kill the petrified trolls! Leave them at 5% HP. Sherfone warned his teammates when he noticed Turtledove's petrified troll only had 10% of its HP remaining. The petrified trolls were lords. Although the chances of them dropping green ebony were high, simply killing them would be a waste. After all, he had Icarus's heart on him. If he killed the lords, the chances of them dropping green ebony would be a lot higher. Although no one understood what Sherfone intended to do, they followed his commands. When Turtledove's petrified troll had 5% HP remaining, the team halted their attacks and shifted their focus to Yu Wenyan's troll. Under the violent bombardment, it only took 5 minutes for all 3 petrified trolls to reach 5% of their total HP. Guild leader, can we kill them now? Aqua Rose asked. While their team's firepower was indeed fierce, keeping all 3 petrified trolls alive placed an extremely heavy burden on their team's healers. Moreover, after such a long battle, their healers only had 30% of their mana remaining. On the other hand, the Troll Chieftain had most of its HP remaining. If they delayed the petrified trolls' deaths, their healers would not last. 30% mana remaining. We could give it a try. Sherfone calculated some factors as he glanced at the Troll Chieftain's HP and the healer's mana. He then said through the team chat, "Healers, use your intermediate mana recovery potions. Fire, take this petrified troll over for me. Remember, keep the petrified trolls at least 50 yards away from the Troll Chieftain. Everyone else, focus your fire on the chieftain." Saying so, Sherfone activated Silent Steps and appeared behind the Troll Chieftain. He then executed Thundering Flash. 5 blue lightning streaks devoured the Great Lord, causing damages of around -7,000 to appear above its head. In terms of defense, the Troll Chieftain was even stronger than the petrified trolls. However, after receiving the damage amplification debuff from Thundering Flash, the team's damage was slightly higher. Divine Providence had a 30-minute cooldown. Sherfone did not want to waste it. Although the Troll Chieftain was a great lord, it only had 42 million HP. It also had only 3 main damage skills. Among them, one was the Tier 3 skill, Storm Rage. The second one was Death Curse. It was a spell that was guaranteed to kill one player if it landed. However, this spell could be dodged, and players would be fine so long as the spell missed them. The last was an AoE skill called Whirlwind of Death. When activated, this skill would decrease the attack speed and movement speed of all enemies within 100 yards by 50%. Moreover, players would receive 1 death debuff every 10 seconds, each debuff increasing the damage they receive by 10%. The Troll Chieftain would only activate this skill when its HP fell to 30%. Many teams had fallen under the Troll Chieftain's greatsword in the past due to Whirlwind of Death. To put it simply, once Whirlwind of Death activated, it would become a competition of damage against the Troll Chieftain. However, Sherfone was not worried. After all, their team's firepower was off the charts. As the battle with the Troll Chieftain continued, Cola's HP continuously increased and decreased. Every time the Troll Chieftain used Storm Rage, Sherfone landed a full-powered blow to one of the Great Lord's joints, disrupting Storm Rage's trajectory slightly. This small deviation provided Cola with enough space to dodge the attack, preventing his HP from dropping to a critical level and increasing the burden on the healers. As for the Troll Chieftain's Death Curse, Sherfone warned his teammates to avoid the Great Lord's front when he noticed the boss activating the spell. As the Troll Chieftain channeled Death Curse through its eyes, one simply needed to avoid standing before the Great Lord and wait out the spell's 5-second duration. Ordinary players might find it difficult to avoid this spell, but these players were experts. As long as Sherfone notified them in time, they could dodge the spell with little to no trouble. When the Troll Chieftain only had 30% HP remaining, it roared with fury. "Despicable humans, know our wrath!" the Troll Chieftain shouted. It then spun its great sword at the sky. A black storm instantly formed, covering the battlefield and enveloping Zero Wings players. Finally! Sherfone had long since grown impatient. He activated Phantom Kill and 9 Dragon Slash. "Don't hold back! Throw everything you've got at it!" With the addition of Sherfang's doppelganger and the 12 Abyssal Blade Phantoms, the team's damage output instantly soared. The other team members similarly activated their sure kill skills. The Troll Chieftain's HP rapidly decreased. It lost over 200,000 HP every second. In the end, when it only had 1% HP remaining, Sherfong activated Divine Providence and Thunder God's Descent. Both he and his doppelganger then activated Flame Burst and went on to attack the Troll Chieftain before assaulting the 3 petrified trolls. As the 4 trolls died, 4 golden balls of light lifted from their corpses and flew into the air. Following which, the golden balls burst and transformed into streams of light that rained on the battlefield. Everyone was rendered speechless. These players had seen something like this before. This scene occurred when they triggered a jackpot. The Midnight Tea Party's members were also dumbfounded. Quadruple jackpots. This was utterly ridiculous. Chapter 1117 Godly Skill. Chapter 1117 Godly Skill. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1117 Godly Skill. After the Troll Chieftain and 3 petrified trolls died, a golden glow once again encased several players on the team. Killing lords and great lords of a higher level definitely yielded far more EXP than killing elite monsters of a higher level. Among those who leveled up, Aqua Rose, Fire Dance, and Violet Cloud finally reached level 45, while Cola, Turtledove, Yuwunyen, Minor Wind, and Shadow Sword rose to level 44. In the Black Dragon Empire, they could all rank within the top 10 on the Empire's ranking list. Currently, the Empire's number 1 player was only level 42, and still quite a distance away from level 43. However, the team was more concerned with the loot before them. This was the first time any of them had seen 4 bosses simultaneously drop jackpots. There were too many items on the ground for them to keep count. This is insane! There should be at least 100 items here. Blackie gaped at the items on the ground. Previously, despite killing so many elite monsters, they had only obtained a few decent items. However, practically every item among the 4 bosses' drops looked decent or better. Guild Leader, your luck is simply amazing. In the future you must join us during the large-scale team dungeon raids. We'll probably get more during a single trip with you than 5 or 6 trips by ourselves. Aqua Rose could not help but look at Sherfong, her eyes shining. It was fairly obvious that, by the look on her face, she wanted to drag Sherfong into a dungeon raid every day. The rest of the team expressed their agreement. With that kind of ridiculous luck, it would be a waste not to have Sherfong raid dungeons. Alright, tidy up the loot first. We'll have plenty of opportunities to raid large-scale team dungeons afterward. Sherfong could not help but chuckle and shake his head in response to everyone's expectant gazes. He had no choice but to offer an empty promise. For now, he had no intentions of revealing Icarus's heart. After all, this godly tool was simply too important to a guild. The necklace could even upgrade a lifestyle player to master rank. Following which, everyone began to collect the loot. They had an extraordinarily abundant harvest this time. The 4 bosses had dropped a total of 115 items, with 96 raw materials. Among the raw materials, 22 were green ebony, which surprised Sherfong. Generally, Lord Rank Trolls only dropped 1 green ebony when killed, or 2 logs if one were lucky. As for Great Lords, they usually dropped 3 logs. Crafting a single advanced transport carriage only required 15 logs. If they obtained another 8 logs, they could produce a second transport carriage. If they had 2 advanced transport carriages, he would have the foundation to start new trade routes to Stone Forest Town. Although the 2 carriages couldn't carry a lot of players, they could increase Stone Forest Town's popularity among NPCs. He could also earn quite a sum in transportation fees. After organizing the materials, Sherfong began to appraise the remaining items. In God's domain, after reaching level 50, players would have to appraise the items monsters dropped if they wanted to know exactly what they had obtained. This added yet another expenditure for many players. Because of this, many players in the past had pursued the appraiser lifestyle class. This way, they could save money on appraisal fees. Of course, players who picked up the Appraiser class for this reason could only appraise low-rank items such as Bronze or Mysterious Iron rank. For Secret Silver rank, one needed to become an Intermediate Appraiser. However, becoming an Intermediate Appraiser was extremely difficult. One generally needed a guild's support to do so. Without the full support of a large guild, it was practically impossible to become an Advanced Appraiser. To become an Intermediate Appraiser, one needed to appraise 20,000 Mysterious Iron items. As items of Mysterious Iron rank were not extremely rare, some workshops or adventurer teams could afford to nurture one. Unfortunately, they had no hope of nurturing an Advanced Appraiser. This was due to the basic requirement of appraising 50,000 fine gold items. Even top-tier workshops and adventurer teams could not obtain so many fine gold items above level 50. Only large guilds had any chance of achieving this. Meanwhile, nurturing advanced appraisers was a benefit to a guild. In the past, guilds had normally only charged their members a quarter of NPC's appraisal fees, while non-guild members paid 3/4 of NPC prices. By doing so, guilds could make a fortune. NPC price for appraising a dark gold item was around 10 gold. For excellent dark gold items, the price was even higher. Even if guilds charged a lower appraisal fee, with how many players there were in a guild, it would not be unusual to appraise several thousand items. Including the appraisal fees from non-guild players, a guild could easily make 200 or 300 gold a day. In the past, small guilds with only thousands of members dreamed of this kind of pure profit. Although Zero Wings still did not have any advanced appraisers, Sherfone possessed the omniscient eyes. Not only was the skill a very advanced identification skill, but it also served as an advanced appraisal skill. After a short moment, Sherfone finished appraising the remaining 19 items. What? Basic soul return actually dropped! Sherfone shouted in surprise after appraising the ordinary-looking skill book. Basic soul return? Doesn't that skill allow one to resurrect other players while in battle? Gentle Snow asked in shock. What? Guild leader, did it really drop? Aqua Rose looked at Sherfone excitedly, afraid that Sherfone was joking. Resurrection during combat would be a godly skill in dungeons. In dungeons, it wasn't uncommon for bosses to instant kill MTs due to mistakes. When such situations occurred, the entire team would die with the MT. However, if a team had basic soul return, they could resurrect the MT and continue the raid. This skill would undoubtedly reduce the unnecessary team wipes in dungeons. Take a look yourself, Sherfone said, nodding. He then shared the skill's information in the team chat. Basic soul return. Resurrects one player while in combat. Player resurrected will only recover 30% HP and 20% mana. Their death penalty will be halved. Cooldown, 30 minutes. Class restriction, Cleric, Druid, and Oracle. After everyone read the skill's introduction, excitement illuminated their expressions. What a godly skill! Previously, these players had only heard of skills that could resurrect players during battle. Now, not only was one such skill before them, but it could also reduce the death penalty. It was very common for players to die and lose a level when fighting a field boss. If they could reduce their death penalty by half and only lose 50% EXP, they could save plenty of time. What a pity! It would be great if the death penalty reduction were slightly higher, Cola said. Whether it was raiding dungeons or killing field bosses, MTs were the most susceptible to death. Following which, Sherfone shared the information for the remaining loot. The items were mostly level 60 weapons and equipment, with the best being Secret Silver rank. However, none of them could compare to basic soul return skill. Guild leader, should we search for another troll encampment? Minor Wind asked. Even after observing their surroundings for some time, he did not notice any signs of incoming monsters. It was likely that they had cleared out all of the nearby trolls. If they wanted to kill more, they would have to grind elsewhere. No. First, we need to greet our friends hiding in the distance, Sherfone said, shaking his head. He then turned to the dead forest on his left, shouting, You've been watching for quite some time now. Why don't you come out and meet us? Chapter 11-18 Reuniting with the Tea Party. Chapter 1118, Reuniting with the Tea Party. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1118, Reuniting with the Tea Party. Due to the quiet of the surrounding forest, the Midnight Tea Party's members heard Sherfone loud and clear. "Leader, we've been discovered. What should we do?" Cloud Yarn asked somewhat anxiously. It wasn't unusual to encounter other players in the fields. However, this situation was somewhat different. This was because they bore the suspicion of banditry. Sherfang's team had just finished killing multiple bosses. Although they had already obtained the loot, the items would remain ownerless for the next 2 hours. As long as they were killed, the loot was guaranteed to drop. Cloud Yarn did not doubt that Sherfang's team would be merciless to anyone who attempted to rob them. It wouldn't have been a major issue if Sherfang's team were only comprised of ordinary experts. However, based on the miraculous feats she had witnessed, Sherfang's team was most likely just as strong as theirs. If it really came down to a fight, the outcome wouldn't be pretty. "Guild leader, could that guy be trying to trick us into revealing ourselves? We're so far away. How could he possibly discover us? Moreover, we're using isolation scrolls right now. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't be able to discover us even with detection. How could a swordsman like him detect us?" the Ranger Dark War said. Among the many classes in God's domain, the Ranger had the strongest perception abilities, with both active and passive skills. Rangers were usually a team's eyes. Although the swordsman class was also an agility-type class, it was not even a match for assassins, much less rangers. The rest of the adventurer team agreed with Dark War's words. Not only were their teams separated by such a massive distance, but the player that had called them out wasn't even a ranger. Moreover, they were also under an isolation scroll's effects. Sherfone might have shouted to see whether or not there were nearby players waiting to ambush his team. "I don't think so. He's looking directly at us. Moreover, this is the Crying Ghost Ridge. This area is too dangerous for ordinary players," Endless Scars said confidently as she watched Sherfone, who stared straight at them. "Big Sis Endless, what should we do? Should we just go over there?" Cloud Yarn asked. "What if those people misunderstand our intentions? Yarn, what are you afraid of? At most, we'll have to fight them. We'll see who regrets their actions in the end," Netherworld said, wearing an eager expression. As an independent adventurer, his favorite hobby was to push his limits. Watching Fire Dance's performance had excited his will to fight. "Wave is right. We're the Midnight Tea Party. Since when have we feared other players? Also, they have just finished an intense battle. They must have exhausted most of their abilities. If it really came down to a fight, they would be the suffering team." The other team members shared similar thoughts. "All right, enough. Let's go over and introduce ourselves. As for a fight breaking out, I don't believe that it's likely. Those players aren't fools. They should have noticed our presence long ago. Since we didn't try to attack them during a crucial moment, they should realize that we carry no ill will," Breezewine, the team's leader, explained. He then approached Sherfang's team. Giving the matter some thought, the Midnight Tea Party's members saw the reason in their leader's words. They then followed Breezewine. Meanwhile, after Sherfone announced the other team's presence, the rest of Zero Wing's members followed his gaze. However, none of them noticed the silhouette or presence of other players. "Snow, do you think the guild leader is being overly sensitive?" Zhao Yueru asked softly after failing to find anybody in the forest ahead. "Overly sensitive?" Gentle Snow considered the possibility. After all, they had just finished a difficult battle. Even the best failed sometimes. They were also in a dangerous neutral map. A mistake wouldn't be unusual. However, as such thoughts began to sweep through the team, a blurry figure appeared from the dark forest ahead. Shortly after, more figures appeared. Zhao Yueru's jaw dropped as she turned to Sherfone in astonishment. Not only was the other party so far away, but they had also used isolation scrolls, yet Sherfone still noticed them. Did he have the eyes of a hawk or something? However, the team did not know that Sherfang's agility attribute had long since broken past the threshold of Tier 1 players, 1,500 points, and reached the realm of Tier 2 players. As a result, he gained the passive skill, Basic Perception. The passive skill greatly enhanced his 5 senses. As a result, he could see and hear further and clearer. To Shifeng, an ordinary magic scroll like the Isolation Scroll was useless. He had noticed them when the Midnight Tea Party had hidden among the trees. However, the team didn't have much time to spend in a daze. The new arrivals were none other than the powerful independent adventurer team they had encountered in Ghost Forest Town. If they were not careful, they would suffer. Hello? I am Breeze Wine, the leader of the adventurer team Midnight Tea Party. We have no ill intentions. We just happened to come across your team as we were passing by. Breeze Wine took the initiative to explain. I understand. If you guys had any hostile will, you would have taken action as we were about to kill the bosses, Shifeng calmly stated. Moreover, we've already met in Ghost Forest Town. Ghost Forest Town? Are you guys that mass team? Breeze Wine stared at Shifeng in shock. In God's domain, many adventurer teams wore black cloaks to hide their identities. Hence, he hadn't humored the thought that Shifeng and the others could be the team he had come across in Ghost Forest Town. After all, his team had the Beastmaster's breath, which had allowed them to reach Crying Ghost Ridge unhindered. Any other team would have been harassed by the level 60 monsters and wouldn't be a match for their adventurer team's speed yet now. Not only had Shifeng's team reached the ridge ahead of them, but they had also killed 2 groups of foreign races. Breeze Wine could not begin to fathom how Shifeng and the others managed this. The other Midnight Tea Party members were similarly surprised. A serious curiosity filled Breeze Wine's expression as he looked at Shifeng and the other Zero Wing members. Are you guys also here for a quest? Shifeng asked without hesitation. Players generally kept quiet about their high-level quests. This was especially true for quests in neutral maps. On the off chance that one attracts unwanted attention, they could suffer significant losses. Hence, when encountering strangers in the fields, one usually avoided mentioning quests to avoid suspicion. In Shifeng's opinion, however, such wariness was unnecessary here. Only a fool would believe that players in a neutral map weren't pursuing some quest. Moreover, by taking the initiative to admit that they were also here for a quest, he could avoid appearing suspicious himself and hide the fact that they were here to grind green ebony. Upon hearing Shifeng's straightforward question, Breeze Wine could not help but laugh and admitted, That's right, our adventurer team is here to complete a quest. Are you perhaps interested? If you help us complete the quest, we will give you 3 pieces of level 45 dark gold equipment as a thank you gift. Leader? Dark War and the others turned to Breeze Wine in confusion. They had spent over half a month to obtain this quest, yet Breeze Wine had just invited a bunch of strangers to help them. Moreover, these strangers were experts whose strength could rival their own. This was simply too risky. Chapter 1119 Fallen Arkansas. Chapter 1119 Fallen Arkansas. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1119 Fallen Arkansas. Just as the Midnight Tea Party's members waited for their leader's answer, Breeze Wine's offer had also stunned Shifeng's team. The man had actually offered 3 pieces of level 45 dark gold equipment right off the bat. At this stage of the game, even first-rate guilds' top-tier experts only wore level 40 dark gold equipment. Level 45 dark gold equipment was simply too difficult to obtain. Normally, one only encountered such items by killing field bosses or completing quests. After all, the various large guilds were still amassing equipment from level 40 large-scale team dungeons. They still did not have good enough equipment to raid level 45 large-scale team dungeons. If put up for auction, level 45 dark gold equipment could sell for at least 200 gold. If it were an excellent piece of dark gold equipment, selling for even 500 gold wouldn't be surprising. 3 pieces of dark gold equipment was easily worth 1,000 gold. Presented with such an offer, even large guilds would be willing to give everything they had to help. Thank you for the offer, Team Leader Breeze, but we have other matters that we need to attend to, so we cannot accept your offer. Shifeng rejected the offer without so much as a thought. Although 3 pieces of level 45 dark gold equipment were quite valuable, it wasn't what Zero Wing needed the most right now. The green ebony they were after would affect Stone Forest Town's prosperity. The wood was arguably their top priority. Shifeng's outright rejection stunned the Midnight Tea Party. Even super guilds wouldn't casually reject a 1,000 gold offer, yet Shifeng hadn't hesitated in the least. Dark War and the others, who had been opposed to the idea of Shifeng's team joining them, were somewhat annoyed. Their Midnight Tea Party had never asked for help before, yet in their first attempt, their offer had been tossed aside like garbage. Why wouldn't they be frustrated? Meanwhile, Endless Scars, who stood to a side, looked at Shifeng. Smiling, she said, "Truthfully, we don't need much help with our quest. We simply hope that you will help us fend off any monsters while we activate a magic array. We won't take up much of your time. 1 hour should be more than enough. If you feel that 3 pieces of level 45 dark gold equipment aren't enough, we can pay 4,000 magic crystals instead. What do you think? Big Sis Endless?" Cloud Yarn's pretty eyes widened as she stared at Endless Scars in astonishment. Their leader's invitation was understandable as the man wanted to befriend Shifeng's team. However, she had never imagined that Endless Scars would also make an offer. Moreover, Endless Scars was offering magic crystals. Magic crystal was the current mainstream currency among God's Domains experts because magic crystals allowed players to enter the Divine Colosseum's trial tower. There were many other uses for magic crystals as well. It was easy to trade magic crystals for coins, but the same was not true for the reverse. As for weapons and equipment, if an expert had no need for them, they didn't have much value to said expert. Hence, Apex experts were more willing to act for magic crystals than anything else. 1 hour for 4,000 magic crystals? Miss Endless, your proposal is impossible to refuse. Endless Scars' wealth momentarily stunned Shifeng. Not long ago, Phoenix Rain had offered to hire 10 of Zero Wing's players for an entire day for 5,000 magic crystals. Even then, he was impressed by the woman's wealth. If it were up to him, he'd never pay such a high price. Only now did he understood that there was always someone better in this world. However, when he thought about how the Blackwater Corporation backed Endless Scars, spending 4,000 magic crystals wouldn't be much of an issue for her. Let's sign a contract right away, then. The smile on Endless Scars' face grew even more charming when she heard Shifeng's answer. Following which, Shifeng signed a contract with Breeze Wine. The system contract was assurance for both parties involved. Aside from players who were unwilling to spend 5 silver coins on the contract, players at this stage of the game generally signed one when working together. After signing the contract, Shifeng and his team followed Midnight Tea Party's members as they carefully proceeded down a gravel path through the dead forest. Leader Endless, what are you two thinking? The quest is dangerous enough already, yet you just invited a team that we know nothing about. What if they harbor some hostility once we complete the quest? Wouldn't we suffer a massive loss? Dark War asked, displeased, as he eyed Shifeng and the others. This quest was extraordinary. It was the most difficult quest the Midnight Tea Party had ever undertaken. Although it was not a legendary quest, it could be considered a pseudo-legendary quest. It was very likely that they could acquire a fragmented legendary item during this quest. Not even super guilds had a fragmented legendary item. If Shifeng and his team discovered this, it would be a miracle if they did not outright betray them. The other Midnight Tea Party members supported Dark War's opinions. They could not understand why these two people, who were usually the most level-headed on their team, would make such an irrational decision about something so important. Ignoring the complaints, Endless Scars turned to Breeze Wine. Smiling, she asked, "Leader, do you want to say it? Or should I?" "Fine, I'll say it then." Breeze Wine shook his head and laughed. "Although you know that our quest is incredibly difficult, you guys don't know exactly how difficult. Based on Endless and my estimates, our chances of success is less than 30%. Opening the entrance will be the most difficult part of our quest." "Opening the entrance?" The team was confused. "That's right. Although we have the key to unlock the Fallen Ark, when we begin the process, it will alert the Ark's guards. Based on the information Endless and I uncovered, there should be 5 guards, one of which is a Grand Lord, while the remaining 4 are Great Lords. With our current manpower, it will be too difficult to maintain the magic array while dealing with 1 Grand Lord and 4 Great Lords. Originally, Endless and I had planned to use 2 of the Tier 3 summoning scrolls our team obtained. Now, however, plans have changed. With these experts' help, our chances of success will rise to 50%, Breezewine explained. Moreover, befriending these experts isn't necessarily a bad thing. We might even get to cooperate with them during high-difficulty quests in the future. Realization dawned when these players heard Breezewine's explanation. It was no wonder why Endless Scars had offered such an exorbitant price to Shifeng's team. As everyone conversed in hushed tones, Breezewine had led them to a large canyon dotted with green hills and blue water. The canyon looked as if some giant sword had split the large mountain in half. Each side of the canyon radiated a powerful pressure that scared the monsters in Crying Ghost Ridge away. Isn't this the Fallen Ark's location? Shock colored Shifeng's face when he saw this scene. Is the Midnight Tea Party's quest related to the Fallen Ark? In his previous life, the Fallen Ark had been extremely famous in God's domain. It was also the Crying Ghost Ridge's greatest secret. It was rumored that the Fallen Ark had been one of the ultimate weapons in the Great Ancient War. Even gods would perish under one of the Ark's attacks. However, the Ark had been destroyed during the war and had fallen in Crying Ghost Ridge. Because of the Ark's magic, the mana flow in the ridge was quite abnormal, making the area inhospitable for humans. Hence, various foreign races had occupied the Crying Ghost Ridge instead. Chapter 1120 Special Lifeform. Chapter 1120 Special Lifeform. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1120 Special Lifeform. As Shifeng recalled information on the Fallen Ark, Breezewine slowly approached the canyon's entrance and carefully took a 16-sided orange crystal from his bag. As soon as he revealed the orange crystal, an invisible aura pulsed from the item. Moreover, each pulse was stronger than the last. What is that? Why does my whole body suddenly feel like lead? Gentle Snow could not help but shift her gaze to the orange crystal. The more she looked at the crystal, the more she feared it. It was as if this crystal were purgatory itself. Even her soul shuddered with fear. Gentle Snow wasn't the only one shocked by Breezewine's crystal. Alluring Summer and the others were similarly afraid. Only the Midnight Tea Party's members, Shifeng, and several Zero Wing Corps members remained unperturbed. Shifeng and the Corps members had experienced this pressure before. It was divine might. There was a qualitative difference between the life rating of gods and ordinary people. Gods had created this orange crystal, and naturally, their aura had tainted it. Ordinary people wouldn't be comfortable around this aura. Around this energy, ordinary humans would feel like they had been submerged in liquid metal. Not only would they find it extremely difficult to move, but their breathing would also become labored. As the orange crystal released one pulse after another, the canyon began to shake. A purple-gold, 5-fold magic array appeared in the sky. Sure enough, their quest is related to the Fallen Arkansas. Have they lost their minds? They dare risk opening it at this stage of the game. Shifeng's expression darkened as he watched Breezewine lift the orange crystal above his head while chanting an incantation. Hurriedly, he shouted, "Everyone, retreat! Retreat?" Zero Wing's members looked to Shifeng in confusion. "What are you guys doing?" Dark War and the other Midnight Tea Party members asked, enraged when they heard Shifeng's command to his teammates. Their teams had already signed a contract with each other. Although there were no penalties for breaking the contract, no matter how they looked at it, Shifeng was breaking his promise. Moreover, now that they had exposed the contents of their quest, how could they possibly allow Shifeng and the others to leave? No time for explanations. Either run or die. Shifeng turned and fled. Shifeng hadn't expected that, while he assumed that the Midnight Tea Party's quest was related to it. Their goal was to activate the slumbering Fallen Arkansas. Activating the Fallen Ark had shaken God's domain in the past. When the Ark woke, it also roused the sleeping abyssal monsters within. Although these abyssal monsters had been gravely injured during the Great Ancient War, they were still immensely powerful. The old monsters that had woken inside the Ark were mythic rank. Moreover, as more time passed and these monsters recovered, they grew more powerful. These monsters' emergence had turned Crying Ghost Ridge into a forbidden land for players. In the past, to explore the fallen Ark's secrets, a few super guilds had dispatched an army of over 100,000 players. This army only consisted of Tier 2 players, and the lowest level was level 60. Many Apex experts had marched with the army as well. Such a force was normally more than enough to deal with 5 or 6 mythic monsters, yet the army had been annihilated in the end. Not one player had made it out of the fallen Ark alive. To make matters worse, these players had boosted the old abyssal monster's strength. It was suicidal to activate the fallen Ark with just their 2 teams of Tier 1 players. Big Sis Endless, they're running away. What should we do? Do we stop them? Netherworld Wave hurriedly asked Endless Scars. No need. We're fleeing too, Endless Scars said, shaking her head as she watched her foam. She ran. But our leader is still here! Cloud Yarn exclaimed anxiously as she shifted her gaze between Endless Scars and Breeze Wine. Once the unlocking process has begun, it cannot be stopped. The situation has changed. We have no choice but to sacrifice him, Endless Scars said without hesitation. However, this isn't a complete loss. At the very least, we can hide and watch what happens when the magic array activates from a distance. Although Endless Scars' words were casual, the Midnight Tea Party's members felt chills crawl down their backs. These players were all companions and had fought through many life-or-death battles together. Their team leader was one of them, yet Endless Scars spoke of sacrificing Breeze Wind as if she were talking about the weather. Unfortunately, as their team leader couldn't do anything, they had to listen to Endless Scars as she was the Midnight Tea Party's second in command. Shortly after the Midnight Tea Party members escaped from the magic array's range, 5 steel giants pulled themselves from the ground. Fallen Garrison Captain, Special Life Form, Grand Lord. Level 65. HP 120 000 000/120 000 000. Fallen Patrol, Special Life Form, Great Lord. Level 63. HP 57 000 000/57 000 000. Upon seeing these monsters, both Endless Scars and Shurfeng's teams gaped in shock. What are these monsters? Their HP is so high. The pressure from them is so strong, too. Aqua Rose felt her scalp tingle as she stared at these monsters. Despite standing several hundred yards away, she still felt an intense pressure radiating from the monsters. It would certainly affect the combat power they could exert in close combat. Based on her estimates, they'd be lucky to display 70% of their usual combat powers. If it came down to a fight, they would team wipe. The Midnight Tea Party also understood how powerful the Guardian monsters were. These monsters' life rating was definitely higher than theirs. The Fallen Garrison Captain, in particular, was at least 2 or 3 ratings higher than the Grand Lords they've previously faced. It could practically rival a mythic monster's strength. In front of these monsters, their preparations were rubbish. While the Midnight Tea Party members were frozen in shock, Endless Scars shifted her gaze towards Shurfeng. Did he know these monsters would show up? Endless Scars came to her own conclusions as she recalled Shurfeng's decisive order to retreat. Although the Fallen Ark was a secret, based on the team's performance, and Shurfeng's statement that they, too, were here for a quest, it was likely that the man knew something about the Fallen Arkansas. Otherwise, how could she explain Shurfeng's decision to flee the moment he saw them activate the magic array? What Endless Scars did not know was that Shurfeng wasn't worried about the steel giant's sudden appearance at all. Rather, he was afraid of the abyssal monsters inside the Fallen Ark itself. If those monsters were released, it would disrupt his plans to grind for green ebony. If that was their goal, he wouldn't help the Midnight Tea Party. As the steel giants appeared, the Fallen Garrison Captain instantly killed Breeze Wine as he maintained the magic array. When Breeze Wine died, the magic array began to dissipate gradually, as did the steel giants shortly after. peace soon returned to the canyon. When the area returned to normal, Endless Scars stopped her team before the Midnight Tea Party members could give Shifeng a piece of their minds. She approached Shifeng's team herself. Chapter 1121 Inferior Legendary Treasure Chest. Chapter 1121 Inferior Legendary Treasure Chest. As Endless Scars slowly walked up to Shifeng, she sized up the man carefully. Although she couldn't see Shifeng's appearance due to the black cloak, curiosity filled her eyes. Shifeng similarly observed Endless Scars, one of God's domain's legendary figures in the past. The woman had clear, bright eyes, curved eyebrows, and thick eyelashes. A hint of pink colored her pristine, white jade skin. Her thin, soft lips were as mesmerizing as a ruby. As she revealed a hint of a smile, she could captivate any player. Shifeng had to admit that even Gentle Snow, who everyone called a goddess, fell short compared to Endless Scars. "Guild leader, that beauty seems interested in you," Blackie said, snickering softly. Instead of responding, Shifeng rolled his eyes. Although others might strive for a beauty like Endless Scars' attention, Shifeng knew how costly it was. He knew all too well what kind of person Endless Scars was. Although she wore an interested expression, looking like a little girl who had just found a new toy, her thoughts were as pure as everyone assumed. It was no different than her attitude towards Breeze Wine. "If Miss Endless wants to ask why we changed our plans so abruptly, I believe you have already figured that out after seeing those 5 special lifeforms. It's not that we want to back out of our transaction, we're just powerless to help. If Miss Endless doesn't have any other matters to discuss, we will take our leave." Shifeng took the initiative to bid the woman farewell. Although he did not know what lay inside the fallen ark that could tempt the Midnight Tea Party, he no longer wanted to associate with the adventurer team. "Please wait. I wish to represent the Midnight Tea Party in thanking you. If not for your command to flee, we would be dead by now. Here are 1,000 magic crystals. Take them as a thank you gift, and let's part as friends," Endless Scars said. She then retrieved a gray gemstone bag and handed it to Shifeng. Every Midnight Tea Party member was stunned. What was going on here? Not only hadn't Endless Scars questioned Shifeng's intentions, but she also gave him 1,000 magic crystals as a sign of gratitude. She was insane. This beautiful big sister is simply too rich. When Violet Cloud saw the cloth bag of 1,000 magic crystals, even she wanted to volunteer to become Endless Scars' little sister. Even large guilds would hesitate before giving away 1,000 magic crystals, yet Endless Scars did so without blinking. Although Shifeng wanted to say something, Endless Scars quickly followed up by saying softly, "Although our transaction has failed, I'd like to conduct another trade. We'll enter the Fallen Ark together and split the items 30-70. How about it?" Endless Scars' offer shocked every player present. "Miss Endless, you saw the monsters guarding the entrance. At this stage of the game, we have no chance against them." Shifeng could not understand what was going through Endless Scars' mind. Those 5 special lifeforms were no laughing matter. Even he was not confident in taking them down. Special lifeforms were extremely rare in God's domain. They were weapons the gods had specifically crafted for war. Like puppets, they possessed eternal life. They also had the power of immortality. Even if players killed them, they would resurrect. Moreover, they would revive slightly stronger than before. Generally, it only took these special lifeforms 10 minutes to resurrect, with some of the more powerful monsters taking up to an hour or so. In addition, these monsters did not drop any loot. Hence, players usually kept their distance. One had to admit that these special lifeforms were excellent guardians. "What if I tell you that there's an inferior legendary treasure chest inside?" Endless Scars asked when she saw Shifeng's lack of interest. Smiling faintly, she continued, "Based on what I've uncovered, there should be more than one inferior legendary treasure chest inside. In addition, there are plenty of epic treasure chests. My map can lead us to these treasure chests and allow us to bypass the traps. Are you sure you're not interested?" The Fallen Ark had been one of the final weapons in the Great Ancient War. The items inside had been left behind by the gods before they had died. NPCs would consider even the most ordinary item a treasure, let alone players. You have a map? Shifeng stared at Endless Scars, flabbergasted. He would be lying if he said he wasn't interested in the fallen Arkansas. However, obtaining these treasures wasn't that easy. To current players, triggering any of the traps inside would result in death. Hence, even after clearing out the monsters in the Fallen Ark, very few players had been willing to explore it in the past. In fact, after the abyssal monsters had been cleared out, a large number of players and guilds had rushed into the Fallen Arkansas. In the end, however, only a few had escaped with their lives. Practically 99.9% of the players that entered the Ark had died in the outer region. Even if one managed to reach the Ark's inner region, they would have to deal with even more powerful traps. As a result, very few were capable of leaving the Ark with any of its treasures. Players had come to both love and despise the fallen Arkansas. However, it would be a different story if they had a map. Aside from the awakened abyssal monsters and a few special lifeforms, the fallen Ark was void of life. The traps would be their main problem after entering the Arkansas. A map of the Ark's various traps was the equivalent of a free pass to its treasures. As long as they were careful to avoid the abyssal monsters and special lifeforms, they could obtain the Ark's treasures unhindered. Shifeng finally understood Breeze Wine and Endless Scars' attraction to the Fallen Ark, and why they'd be willing to spend 4,000 magic crystals to hire his team for an hour. That's right. If you don't believe me, take a look. Although it is only a fragment, can lead us to the Fallen Ark's inner region, Endless Scars said. She then took out a broken map with only 2/5 of the original, and showed it to Shifeng. The item's name was Fallen Ark Map. However, if Shifeng wished to look at it in detail, he needed the owner's permission. I can help you get inside. However, I have a condition. After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng eventually chose to take the risk. In the past, even the most inferior item players secured from the Fallen Ark's inner area was an epic item. If one were lucky, they could even obtain a fragmented legendary item. A fragmented legendary item. With one such item, a player's combat power would skyrocket. If he could obtain one, the item would greatly enhance his chances of success both in the Dark Arena and in the contest for Thunder Island. As for the abyssal monsters that would be released, they would mostly roam the Crying Ghost Ridge's inner regions. His team could still grind trolls in the outer region. The only drawback was a slightly lower drop rate for Green Ebony. Endless Scars had only wanted to test Shifeng with her offer. However, upon hearing Shifeng's confident reply, a small glimmer of hope shone in her flawless eyes. As long as your conditions aren't too outrageous, I can agree to them on behalf of our team leader, Endless Scars straightforwardly replied, smiling faintly. It was as if she had long since guessed Shifeng's thoughts. Pointing at the map in Endless Scars' hand, Shifeng said in a non-negotiable tone, "Give me a copy of the Fallen Ark map. Once we're inside, we'll go our separate ways and agree to a non-aggression pact. What we each walk away with will depend on our abilities." Chapter 1122 Foundation Magic Array. Chapter 1122 Foundation Magic Array. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1122 Foundation Magic Array. Endless Scars' conversation with Shifeng had been private. The other players hadn't heard their discussion. However, when the Midnight Tea Party members saw Endless Scars' frown, they were shocked. Endless Scars had never revealed such an expression throughout her time on the team. Even when monsters nearly wiped their team out, nothing close to a frown had appeared on her face. "Propose another. Our team cannot agree to that condition," Endless Scars said after giving the matter some thought. Looking straight at Shifeng, she said seriously, "The map itself is a pass to the Fallen Arkansas. If you have it, you can enter the Ark more than once. This will undoubtedly increase our competition over the Ark's treasure. With how important the Fallen Ark is, I believe that no sane person would agree to your proposal. Moreover, even if our adventurer team can't enter the Fallen Ark right now, we can simply return when we're strong enough. In any case, the key is ours. If we don't activate the Ark, no one will be able to enter it. What you're saying is true. However, you don't seem to know the Fallen Ark's true secret, Shifeng said, chuckling. He had long since guessed Endless Scars' reply. The Fallen Ark map was priceless. Naturally, he didn't expect the Midnight Tea Party to just make a copy for him. However, the adventurer team's understanding of the Fallen Ark was no match for his. What are you trying to say? Although Endless Scars had her suspicions, after hearing Shifeng's confident comments, she was even more certain that Shifeng knew plenty of information about the Fallen Arkansas. Well, it doesn't really matter even if I tell you this. Although you have the key in the map, it is still impossible to obtain the items inside the Fallen Ark, Shifeng explained as he pointed to where the 5 special lifeforms had disappeared. You've seen for yourselves how powerful those guards are. However, the monsters inside are even more formidable. If you open the Ark, those monsters will escape. Moreover, those monsters will, slowly but surely, grow stronger. If you don't deal with them properly, even the map won't help you. Meanwhile, I have a way to deal with those monsters. If we work together, we can reach the Ark's inner region quickly. Even if you don't want to cooperate with us, once you open the Ark, we can still go in ourselves. Once the Ark is open, it won't ever close. Anyone will be able to enter. Endless Scars hesitated after listening to Shifeng's explanation. Although she wasn't sure if Shifeng were telling the truth, if he was, then her side had no way of dealing with those monsters. Their map might as well be a blank piece of paper. On the other hand, Shifeng had a way of combating this problem. Once Shifeng's team entered the Ark, although their progress would be slow without the map, the Midnight Tea Party would suffer a massive loss if they came across any treasure. Most importantly, her team did not have a lot of time. After all, their quest had a time limit. Based on her estimates, even if they focused on grinding and completing their class promotions, the furthest they could reach was Tier 2, level 55 before the quest time limit was up. At that tier and level, their team might have a chance of defeating the 5 entrance guards. Unfortunately, she was not certain that they could deal with the Ark's monsters, which Shifeng claimed were far stronger. She had to admit that Shifeng's knowledge on those monsters was invaluable. Alright, I'll agree to your conditions. However, you need to tell me what you know about those monsters. You also have to tell me how to deal with them. If what you say is true, I'll make a copy of the map once we're in the Arkansas. If you lie to me, you won't get anything. Endless Scars glared at Shifeng. This was the first time she hadn't had the upper hand in a negotiation since she had joined God's domain. She was even more frustrated that she still didn't know Shifeng and his team members' identities. That won't be a problem. Once you see for yourself, you'll know the truth. Shifeng laughed. After the various super guilds' army had suffered annihilation, Crying Ghost Ridge had become a forbidden land for players in the past. Even then, however, many players had sought the Fallen Ark's treasure. To deal with the incomparably powerful abyssal monsters, these players had formed a multitude of plans. Unfortunately, none of those plans had succeeded. The most ridiculous part was that players had only discovered a proper method of dealing with the monsters after they had been defeated. That method involved utilizing mana stones. Due to the special mana phenomenon inside the Fallen Ark, the slumbering abyssal monsters couldn't absorb mana to recover. However, once the Fallen Ark was unlocked, this mana disturbance would vanish. To recover their strength, these abyssal monsters urgently needed large amounts of mana. Ordinary magic crystals would not do. To those ancient abyssal monsters, mana of such quality did little to aid in their recovery. Only mana stones were suitable. When the time came, he simply needed to construct a foundation magic array to display the mana stones. The mana stones would lure the abyssal monsters, and once they left, these abyssal monsters wouldn't be able to return to the Ark for a short time. Their teams could then search the Ark relatively safely. Following which, Shifeng and Endless Scars signed a contract. After ensuring that there were no issues, Shifeng had Violet Cloud use basic soul return on Breeze Wine. This way, Breeze Wine would not lose a level, and his combat power would be unaffected. Wait here for now. I still need to prepare, Shifeng said before entering the dead forest by himself and setting up a teleportation point with the Abyss pendant. He then used a return scroll and teleported to White River City. As soon as Shifeng returned to White River City, he passed the green ebony he had obtained to Melancholic Smile. Although they only had enough for one advanced transport carriage, it took a considerable amount of time to manufacture one. Even if they had a master engineer and a master forger, they would need close to a day. Hence, the sooner they began production, the better. Inside one of the Candlelight Trading Firm's special forging room, Shifeng retrieved the Philosopher's Stone, which he had picked up from his private warehouse on his way back, and began to synthesize magic crystals into mana stones. He could synthesize one mana stone from 50 magic crystals. Without hesitation, he used all 1,000 magic crystals he had obtained from Endless Scars and ended up with 20 mana stones. That was enough to lure the abyssal monsters from the Ark twice. Following which, Shifeng made 9 magic array scrolls for the 9-star polar domain. Once those were complete, he used the Abyss Pendant to return to Crying Ghost Ridge. Upon returning to the ridge, Shifeng used 10 mana stones to set up a foundation magic array far from the canyon where the fallen Ark resided. With this foundation magic array, he could lure all the abyssal monsters from inside the Arkansas. After finishing that task, Shifeng returned to his team. "You've finished your tasks already?" Endless Scars asked Shifeng with a suspicious tone. Only 1 hour or so had passed since Shifeng had left. That wasn't even enough time to make a round trip to a town or city. What could he possibly do in 1 hour? Originally, she had thought that Shifeng had left to gather reinforcements. After all, with their current strength, defeating the 5 guardian monsters was impossible. At the very least, they needed a team of 100 experts. Yet, Shifeng hadn't brought even one player back with him. "Endless, is this brat toying with us?" Dark War asked through the team chat, infuriated. After Shifeng left, Endless Scars had told her team everything about her agreement with Shifeng. They all thought that Shifeng's demands were outrageous. They also thought that Shifeng was lying about how powerful the monsters inside the Ark were, and that he simply wanted to trick them for their map. Shifeng's speedy return only justified their assumptions. Before Endless Scars could reply, however, Shifeng beat her to it and said, "I've completed my preparations. However, during the battle, everyone needs to follow my commands." Chapter 1123 Monsters Domain. Chapter 1123 Monsters Domain. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1123 Monsters Domain. "You'll take command?" The Midnight Tea Party members shot Shifeng's scornful looks. To ordinary players, a team commander's role was not particularly important. Ordinary players wouldn't have any choice in the matter if an expert like Shifeng wanted to guide them. However, they weren't ordinary players. Moreover, even the slightest mistake could result in death in the upcoming battle. If they died and lost the fight, they would have wasted several days of effort. If they were not absolutely confident in their commander, how could Apex experts risk listening to him? Having only met him recently, Shifeng was just a stranger. They could let Shifeng's request for the fallen Ark maps slide. However, if he thought that they would listen to his commands, he was simply dreaming. Breezewine nodded in agreement with his teammates' responses. He didn't think that it would be suitable for Shifeng to take command of the Midnight Tea Party, either. However, this was not because he looked down on Shifeng's abilities. Rather, for one to qualify as a commander, one needed to familiarize themselves with every player on the team. This included their various basic attributes, skills, habits, and many other details. Only by knowing this information could one effectively lead and allow everyone in the team to display their fullest potential. Shifeng knew nothing about the Midnight Tea Party members. Although it wouldn't be a major issue if they were raiding a simple dungeon or boss monster, they intended to take on a level 65 Grand Lord and 4 level 63 Great Lords. Any mistakes would definitely result in casualties. "It's fine if you don't want me in command. I'll just tell you our raid strategy. When the time comes, work with us," Shifeng said, not minding the hostile looks he received. "Only, I will not be responsible for any casualties." 5 special lifeforms working together was no laughing matter. Based on Shifeng's understanding, every one of those 5 special lifeforms possessed their own ultimate moves. Alone, those ultimate moves might not be that powerful, but combined, they might increase exponentially. If those 5 special life forms cooperated with each other, they could annihilate a team of apex experts effortlessly. Players needed an accurate grasp on the timing of the boss's skills. Even a slight error could result in a team wipe. Hence, he had asked to take command. "That won't be a problem," Breezewine confidently replied. "If a team wipe occurs due to a mistake on our side, we'll compensate you correspondingly." The rest of the team members agreed with the arrangement as well. At the very least, this was far better than taking orders from a stranger. Following which, Sherfone began to assign tasks. In reality, there was very little the Midnight Tea Party needed to do. As Breezewine had assumed, Sherfone was not very familiar with the Midnight Tea Party's members. Thus, he hadn't assigned them any particularly important tasks. The adventurer team mainly had to supply 9 magical classes to maintain the 9-star polar domain magic array. Sherfone told the other 9 players to distract 2 of the fallen patrols. They did not even need to focus on damaging the Great Lords. As for Breezewine, he had to unlock the Ark, of course. Zero Wing would deal with the fallen garrison captain and the remaining 2 fallen patrols. After Sherfone finished assigning tasks, both teams began to inspect their weapons, equipment, potions, and scrolls. Later, while leader is maintaining the magic array, I'll take over command. You guys better not embarrass our team, Endless Scars said seriously as she glanced at her teammates. Endless, rest assured. You know our standards better than anyone else. When the time comes, even if their side is annihilated, we won't have any issues. The Ranger Dark War sneered as he shot a glare at Sherfeng's team. Facing 2 level 63 Great Lords might be a problem for ordinary experts. To their adventurer team, however, it was simply a somewhat strenuous task. Moreover, they only had to serve as distractions. They were not even required to fight the 2 bosses head-on. On the other hand, Sherfeng's side, which needed to confront a Grand Lord and 2 Great Lords directly, was the largest concern. After everyone confirmed that there were no issues, Sherfeng signaled Breezewine with a wave of his hand, having the latter start the unlocking process. Seeing this, Breezewine raised the orange crystal above his head and began to chant once more. Following which, the canyon shook as 5 massive figures rose from the ground. They were none other than the fallen garrison captain and the 4 fallen patrols. "Activate the magic array!" Sherfeng hurriedly shouted. Endless Scars gave the same command practically at the same time. Suddenly, a massive, purple-gold magic array appeared and enveloped the 5 boss monsters. As an intermediate magic array, the 9-star polar domain could even suppress mythic monsters. Naturally, the garrison captain and patrols were no exception. Immediately, the 5 bosses' attributes began to fall rapidly. "How is this intermediate magic array so powerful?" The Midnight Tea Party was momentarily stunned. In the blink of an eye, the fallen garrison captain's HP fell from 120 million to 96 million, whereas the fallen patrol's HPs fell from 57 million to 41 million. The magic array's effects even stunned Endless Scars. While they, the Midnight Tea Party, had seen intermediate magic arrays before and had even collected a complete set themselves, that intermediate magic array was only capable of reducing a Grand Lord's basic attributes by 10%. Even then, it was already considerably powerful for an intermediate magic array. Yet the 9-star polar domain had weakened the fallen garrison captain by 20% and the fallen patrols by 30%. This was simply inconceivable. Of course, Sherfeng's team didn't even stop to notice the Midnight Tea Party members' reactions. "Go!" Under Sherfeng's command, Kola, Yiwumyen, and Turtledove charged at own targets. As the lead MT, Kola would deal with the Grand Lord, while Turtledove and Yiwumyen would each tank the 2 Great Lords. Special Lifeform's life rating was slightly higher than ordinary monsters, though they were undoubtedly inferior to archaic species. With their attributes suppressed, Kola and the others should be able to handle them. However, before Kola could reach the fallen garrison captain, the latter swung its massive, 10-meter-long great sword at the ground. Boom! A massive fissure ripped through the ground, extending straight towards Kola. Cola! Activate Protection Blessing! Sherfong shouted upon seeing the attack. Cola activated Protection Blessing without hesitation. He then positioned his shield before his body and gripped it with both hands. Pung! Cola was thrown 10 yards away on the spot. The Truth's shield and protection on him shattered into oblivion. Meanwhile, Cola's HP fell by over 25,000. The Troll Chieftain's ultimate move paled tremendously in comparison to the fallen garrison captain's attack. The Fisher only stopped after 50 yards. The garrison captain's attack range made everyone shudder. Had Cola not activated Protection Blessing in time, he would be dead. The garrison captain's attack stunned every player in the battle. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end. In the next moment, the 4 fallen patrols moved simultaneously, abruptly raising their battle axes and slamming them to the ground violently. Boom! 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 The ground began to tremble. Golden jets began to spray from the ground in a 30-yard radius around the 4 fallen patrols. When the 4 domains were superimposed over each other, it was practically impossible to avoid them. Meanwhile, any player that these jets struck would receive anywhere from -5,000 to -8,000 damage. These golden jets appeared without any signs or fixed patterns. The overlapping domains doubled the attack's density. Although they tried their best to dodge the attacks, players occasionally slipped up and got hit, their HPs decreasing rapidly. One level 41 from the Midnight Tea Party, unfortunately, got caught in 2 overlapping domains. Without any time to respond, numerous jets struck the Berserker, and he died on the spot. Chapter 1124 Tier 4 Super Spell. Chapter 1124 Tier 4 Super Spell. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1124 Tier 4 Super Spell. Everyone, avoid the overlapping domains! What kind of skill is that? Why is it still going on even after so long? The battle had just begun, yet one person had already died. Both Sherfeng's team and the Midnight Tea Party grew anxious. Everyone had seen how the Berserker had died. The golden jets appeared suddenly and silently. Moreover, the attacks could not be blocked, only dodged. Even if they were only near one domain, they would have to dodge 3 to 5 jets. Near 2 overlapping domains, one would face 7 to 10 attacks simultaneously. The Berserker's paths of retreat had been cut off. In the end, he had died before the team's healers could help him. The Midnight Tea Party members no longer wore their previous complacent expressions. Lure the patrols to 4 corners. Do not let them near the garrison captain, Sherfong commanded. Sherfong was not particularly familiar with the Guardian boss's skills. After all, he had only learned about the Fallen Arc after it had been activated in the past. He did not even know who had activated the Arkansas. All he knew was that these special lifeforms had their own ultimate moves and that those ultimate moves would become exponentially stronger when combined. However, he hadn't expected these ultimate moves to be domain skills. Among the various skills in God's domain, those that posed the greatest danger were none other than large-scale destruction spells and domain skills. Attacks from large-scale destruction spells usually only lasted 1 or several waves. If players could endure the spell's duration, they would live. However, domain skills could stay in effect much longer. Domain skill would gradually whittle players down until they died. Endless Scars now realized how severe the situation was. Immediately, she took a Tier 3 summoning scroll from her bag and shouted through the team chat. Wave, use your summoning scroll with mine. We'll use them to lure away the patrols. Melee players, stay away from the bosses. Use only ranged attacks. After all was said and done, the Midnight Tea Party's members were still experts. Very quickly, they began to move. The team's melee players promptly distanced themselves from the fallen patrol's domains. Meanwhile, Endless Scars and Netherworld Wave each summoned a Tier 3 creature and instructed them to pounce on the fallen patrols. Both Endless Scars and Netherworld Wave were incredibly proficient with controlling their summoned creatures. Although they couldn't dodge all of the golden jets, they could dodge the majority of them. With relative ease, the summoned creatures arrived before the fallen patrols and swiped their claws at the enemies. Pun! When the Tier 3 summoned creature's claws struck the stationary fallen patrols, the clang of metal rang out. The summoned creature's claws had only scratched the patrol's armor. They did not even manage to push the patrols back despite both being at the Great Lord rank. The fallen patrols had only lost around 4,000 HP from the attacks. Why are their defenses so high? Even a Grand Lord doesn't have this much defense. When the Midnight Tea Party's members saw the damage the Tier 3, level 60 summoned creatures had dealt with their normal attacks, their expressions grew gloomy. When they had used Tier 3 summoned creatures to fight Tier 3 Great Lords in the past, the former's normal attacks usually dealt 20 to 30,000 damage. Even against Grand Lords, their attacks dealt nearly minus 8,000 points, yet against these bosses, their summoned creatures had only dealt around minus 4,000 damage. The fallen patrol's defense was ridiculous. If even a Tier 3 summoned creature dealt so little damage, then players like themselves would deal, at most, minus 1,500 damage to the fallen patrols. Meanwhile, the fallen patrols each had 41 million HP. With their battle recovery, they could regenerate over 410,000 HP every 5 seconds. In other words, they would recover 82,000 HP every second. If their damage couldn't exceed 82,000 every second, then the fallen patrols were invincible against them. Big Sis Endless, how are we supposed to fight these things? Cloud Yarn asked anxiously. She could not help but turn to the Grand Lord Shifeng's team fought. If the fallen patrols were already so difficult to deal with, wouldn't the fallen garrison captain be even more overbearing? Forget about that for now. Lure the bosses away. Endless Scars ordered, shaking her head as she also glanced at Shifeng's team. The 5 guardian bosses were far more powerful than she had thought. Initially, she had believed that the Midnight Tea Party could deal with these monsters after they reached Tier 2, level 55. Now, however, it would seem that even after reaching that level, they had less than a 40% chance of beating these monsters. After the Midnight Tea Party lured 2 of the fallen patrols away, Turtledove and Yiwumian activated their life-saving skills and began to lure their patrols away from the fallen garrison captain. Once the 4 patrols were in 4 separate corners, Kola, who stood in the middle, had a much easier time dealing with the garrison captain. However, even after activating Protection Blessing, he still took over minus 10,000 damage from one of the Grand Lord's normal attacks. Without Protection Blessing, a single attack would devour over 20,000 of Kola's HP. Kola couldn't imagine standing against the garrison captain without the 9-star polar domain. Moreover, when everyone's attacks struck the garrison captain, every one of them dealt less than minus 1,000 damage. Only Fire Dance and Gentle Snow's normal attacks could deal over minus 1,500 damage to the Grand Lord, while their skills dealt up to minus 5,000 damage. However, to the garrison captain, which had 96 million HP, that damage was negligible. Guild leader, we won't even scratch its HP at this rate. Sooner or later, it will wear us down. Why don't we retreat and have the guild's main force meet us here? Gentle Snow advised through the team chat. Facing a Great Lord with a 20-man team was already pushing their luck, not to mention a Grand Lord that was 20 levels above them. If not for their excellent weapons and equipment, and their exceptionally high combat standards, they would have team wiped with the first wave of attacks. No need. Kola, keep hold of the boss. 3 seconds is long enough. The current situation didn't surprise Shifeng overmuch. He was fully aware of how powerful special lifeforms functioned. They were only inferior to archaic species. Knowing this, he had prepared a method to deal with them. In the next moment, Shifeng took a blood-red magic scroll from his bag. The instant the magic scroll appeared, a powerful mana fluctuation occurred within the 9-star polar domain. Everyone's gazes instantly shifted to Shifeng. What is that magic scroll? Endless Scars muttered shocked, when she noticed the rampant mana inside the barrier. This magic scroll was one of the 2 Tier 4 magic scrolls Shifeng had obtained from killing the awakened NPC, Lancelot. Meanwhile, the garrison captain noticed the mana fluctuations immediately, the Grand Lord's eyes similarly shifting towards the blood-red scroll in Shifeng's hands. It shifted to attack the swordsman. Don't even think about getting away from me that easily. Cola raised his shield and slammed it into the garrison captain's foot. He then activated the Tier 1 skill Justice Roar, his body releasing a dazzling golden glow. He instantly regained the boss's attention and aggro. At the same time, his strength would double if the boss didn't attack him. However, even after Cola activated Justice Roar, the garrison captain was still focused on Sherfoam. Guild leader, what did you just take out? Cola could not help his surprise. With no other choice, Cola activated Power of Darkness, his attributes soaring once more. He then executed the Tier 1 skill, Righteous Punishment. Boom! With a single strike, he forced the garrison captain's right foot back, causing over -10,000 damage to appear above the Grand Lord's head. The attack had nearly forced the garrison captain to kneel. Yet, the fallen garrison captain did not return its attention to Cola. Rather, it advanced on Sherfoam, one step after another. Seeing this, Cola continued to execute several powerful moves, every one dealing over -10,000 damage, yet the result did not change. Guild leader, this monster has gone nuts! Cola was dumbfounded. As the garrison captain arrived before Sherfoam, before it slashed its great sword down on Sherfoam, Sherfoam finally finished chanting the magic scroll's incantation. Disillusionment! Sherfeng's eyes flew open. Two extremely complex and refined blood-red magic arrays then emerged from his eyes. The other players were astonished. Tier 4 Super Spell, Disillusioned Space. Chapter 1125 Unexpected Evolution. Chapter 1125 Unexpected Evolution. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1125 Unexpected Evolution. The instant the magic scroll activated, it seemed as if space had frozen as the garrison captain's descending great sword came to an abrupt halt. Immediately after, the space within the 9-star polar domain began to change, a blood-red color coating the surrounding scenery. What's going on? Why does my body feel so light? Wait, our basic attributes have risen. It's true. My basic attributes have increased by 100%. Guys, look. The boss seems to have slowed to a crawl. As everyone looked at the garrison captain's greatsword again, they found that they could see the weapon clearly. Before, they had only seen afterimages. As the greatsword descended, the earth shattered. Over 30-meter-long fissures broke through the ground. However, the garrison captain had only hit the afterimage Sherfoam had left behind. The swordsman himself had long since moved 10 yards away. So fast. When did he start moving? Endless Scars was flabbergasted. Unlike the rest of the players, she had focused on Sherfoam. However, during the brief moment when she glanced at the garrison captain's greatsword, which had suddenly and significantly slowed, Sherfoam had moved 10 yards away. She found the matter unbelievable. Look! Those patrols have slowed down as well. Even the golden jets are slower. With this speed, even I can dodge them easily. The players finally noticed that fallen garrison captain hadn't been the only one whose speed had been affected. The fallen patrols in the four corners had also suffered a speed reduction. Even their domain skills were affected. Zero Wings members and the Midnight Tea Party could now dodge the golden jets easily. Just who is he? The Midnight Tea Party members couldn't help but glance at Sherfoam. They usually boasted their vast understanding of God's domain. However, even with their bountiful knowledge and experiences, they had never encountered a situation like this. Without a doubt, this phenomenon had something to do with Sherfeng's blood-red magic scroll. There was no other way to explain it. Now that everyone's basic attributes had been boosted while the 5 bosses' reaction speeds and attack speeds had decreased, the Midnight Tea Party's members, who had previously begun to despair, brimmed with hope. Currently, the 5 bosses had only landed 1 out of 3 or 4 attacks against their respective MTs. However, due to the significant attribute increase, the boss's damage had decreased. Take the fallen garrison captain Cola tanked for example. Originally, Cola withstood over -20,000 damage from the Grand Lord's normal attacks. Now, however, the Grand Lord's normal attacks only dealt around -13,000 to the Guardian Knight. In addition, due to Kola having activated Power of Darkness, his HP had risen to more than 56,000. Including Disillusioned Space's effects, his HP had risen to more than 112,000. He was practically a humanoid monster at this point. Right now, Kola wouldn't even have issues tanking 3 fallen garrison captains, much less 1. As for Kola's damage, due to the strength bonus from Justice Roar, just his normal attacks dealt nearly minus 10,000 damage, while his skills dealt close to minus 30,000 damage. Meanwhile, Violet Cloud, who stood among the healers at the rear, had similarly grown more powerful. Every one of her heals restored over 10,000 HP to Kola. If she double cast her spells, she could heal over 20,000 HP every time. If she were lucky and triggered a double critical, she could instantly heal over 40,000 HP. Not only was Violet Cloud capable of keeping Kola alive by herself, but she could also handle healing Turtledove and Yi Wemian. Guild leader, what kind of magic scroll did you use? I feel like we can even deal with a mythic monster right now, Kola exclaimed through the team chat. The rest of the team nodded in agreement. Aside from their frightening damage, the most troublesome aspect about boss monsters were their attack speeds and reaction speeds. Now that the fallen garrison captain had been suppressed in all 3 aspects, it was only as difficult as a High Lord. It only dealt slightly more damage. However, their increased attributes made up for that, further decreasing the raid's difficulty. Right now, they felt like they were simply fighting a powerful lord. Alright, enough idling around. Use your berserk skills and throw everything you've got. We only have 15 minutes until this space disappears. Sherfong felt a sting in his chest. Lancelot had only dropped 2 Tier 4 magic scrolls. He had just used the more precious of the 2, the Tier 4 Super Spell Disillusioned Space. Unlike Tier 4 curses, super spells had been created during ancient times. They were ridiculously powerful, capable of transforming the environment. They were many times more powerful and mystical than the spells of the current era. Even the current NPCs in God's domain couldn't analyze these spells. Thus, they were called super spells. After activating Disillusioned Space, it would transform the area within 200 yards of the caster into a custom world. All enemies within this world would be suppressed, decreasing their movement speed, attack speed, and reaction speed by 2/3 of their totals. At the same time, this world would also enhance the caster and his allies, decreasing the boss's difficulty by 1 tier. Take the fallen garrison captain for example. It had originally been a Tier 3, upper rank existence. Now that its raid difficulty had reduced, it was only as strong as a Tier 2, upper rank. Unfortunately, Disillusioned Space's duration was considerably short. Even so, in the past, everyone had called it the rarest magic scroll in God's domain, second to none. In the past, a Tier 4 super magic scroll had been worth at least 3 epic items. If a team of Tier 2 players used the scroll, they could even kill Tier 4 mythic monsters. However, Sherfone couldn't care less right now. The garrison captain and patrols were far stronger than he had imagined. If he hadn't used the magic scroll, they would have undoubtedly team-wiped. Moreover, trading a Tier 4 super magic scroll for a map to the Fallen Ark was a sure profit transaction. Upon hearing Sherfeng's warning, everyone promptly began to activate their berserk skills. Although the fallen garrison captain and fallen patrols still possess very high HPs, their reduced speed made them living targets. After activating their berserk skills, everyone easily dealt over minus 10,000 damage with their attacks, while Fire Dance and Gentle Snow could deal over minus 20,000 damage. Sherfong didn't hold back either, as he activated Power of Darkness. He then used Silent Steps and appeared behind the garrison captain before activating Phantom Kill. Both he and his doppelganger activated Flame Burst simultaneously. Miniature suns appeared on both Sherfeng's and his doppelganger's swords. Every strike they landed on the garrison captain dealt over minus 60,000 damage, while critical hits dealt over minus 130,000 damage. By the time Sherfong and his doppelganger dropped to the ground, both had landed a total of 30 consecutive attacks. The fallen garrison captain lost over 2 million HP on the spot. The damages that appeared above the Grand Lord's head stupefied everyone. With such high damage, Sherfone could instantly kill a chieftain of the same level. Time passed quickly. Under the players' crazed bombardment, it took roughly 6 minutes for the garrison captain's 96 million HP to hit zero. Boom! When the fallen garrison captain collapsed, although it did not drop any loot, Gentle Snow, Alluring Summer, and the other members of Zero Wing rose from level 42 to level 43. The abundant EXP exceeded everyone's expectations. The Midnight Tea Party's members also leveled up from 41 to level 42. However, no one stopped to celebrate as they still had to deal with 4 fallen patrols. They had less than 10 minutes left before Disillusion Space's duration ran out. If they could not kill these bosses within this period, it would be much harder to do so afterward. Moreover, Sherfone had already told everyone that special lifeforms were immortal existences. Until they opened the Fallen Ark's entrance, these special lifeforms would continue to resurrect. Moreover, special lifeforms generally revived in around 10 minutes. They couldn't afford to waste any time. However, the fallen patrols were much easier to deal with than the fallen garrison captain. Even without their berserk skills, the two teams could deal a lot of damage to these bosses. In addition, they still had the support of the Midnight Tea Party's 2 Tier 3 summoned creatures. Finally, 14 minutes since Disillusion Space had been activated, the 4 fallen patrols collapsed, transforming into piles of rubble and gifting a large amount of EXP. The Midnight Tea Party members even leveled up once more, reaching level 43. This leveling speed astonished these players. They had actually gained nearly 2 full levels EXP in just 15 minutes. Zero Wing's members were already high-leveled. Although they had also obtained plenty of EXP, it was not enough to reach the next level. However, the abundant EXP had helped Sherfone reach 82% of level 47. If he grinded trolls, he could reach level 48 in only half a day. As the Guardian bosses died, the canyon began to tremble violently. Suddenly, the canyon's center collapsed. A towering aqua-blue temple then emerged from the ground. At the same time, the familiar sound of a system notification reached everyone's ears. God's Domain System Announcement. Players have successfully activated a new expansion pack in God's Domain. The system will undergo an upgrade. All players, please prepare to log out of the game. Chapter 1126 Revealing Identity. Chapter 1126 Revealing Identity. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1126 Revealing Identity. The notification about God's Domain System update echoed in every player's ears. The notification immediately earned various reactions. Who's the bastard that triggered a new expansion pack? I'm only halfway through a dungeon here. Crap! I just bought a helmet and joined God's Domain. Many players began voicing their dissent on the official forums. However, although many people were outraged about this update, even more people were curious about its contents. For a time, everyone made their own guesses. Meanwhile, before the Temple of the Fallen Ark, the sudden system notification caught Sherfone and the others by surprise. They had only activated the entrance of the Fallen Ark after much difficulty, yet even before they had the chance to enter the Ark, the system announced an update. This was ridiculous. By now, practically everybody playing God's Domain knew that a system update signified a major upgrade. Meanwhile, the more God's Domain improved, the more difficult the game would become. Guild leader, should we log off here? Aqua rose and the others turned to Sherfone. The game had given them 20 minutes to log off. It wasn't exactly a lot of time, but it was more than nothing. If they strived hard enough, they might reach the Fallen Ark's inner region. If they entered the Ark after the system update completed, who knew how difficult the Ark would become? After all, this system was definitely related to the Fallen Ark's activation. After giving the matter some thought, Sherfone looked to Breeze Wine and Endless Scars and said seriously, "We have decided to enter the Ark right away. Do you want to enter first, or wait until after the update?" Sherfone hadn't expected the system update this time. However, this helped Sherfone recall the system's update after the Fallen Ark had emerged in the past. The update back then had ruined many players. This was because this update would improve God's Domain's traps. Not only would removing the traps become twice as difficult, but the trap's power and concealment effect also increased significantly. This situation caused many players, who enjoyed adventuring in the fields, many hardships. The higher difficulty of obtaining weapons and equipment for adventure-seeking independent players was also due to this update. In God's Domain, there were 3 major sources for weapons and equipment. The first was dungeons, the second was field adventures, and the third was quest rewards. In the past, due to this system update, the weapons and equipment on the market had decreased significantly. As a result, players that produced weapons and equipment became even more important in God's Domain. The gods from the ancient era had left behind the traps inside the fallen Arkansas. These traps were incredibly difficult to remove to start with. If these traps were improved, exploring the fallen Ark would become far more difficult. However, Sherfone had no intentions of informing the Midnight Tea Party about this. Instead of answering Sherfeng's question, Endless Scars turned to ask Breeze Wine. "Leader, what are your thoughts?" They had already cleared the most difficult part of their quest. However, Sherfone had previously stated that, shortly after the Fallen Ark activated, monsters even more powerful than the 5 Guardian bosses would appear. According to their original plan, they had intended to wait until the monsters had been lured away from the Fallen Ark before they dove in to explore. However, they had less than 20 minutes before they had to log off. If they entered the Ark now, they would have to risk encountering those monsters. "Let's not enter the Ark for now. The monsters inside have yet to leave. If we die because we rushed into the Ark, it will do us more harm than good." In the end, Breeze Wine chose the safer approach instead. In his opinion, as long as he had the Fallen Ark map, both the Fallen Ark's treasures and quest were within their grasp. There was no need to risk their lives. "What about our map?" Blackie could not help but ask. Their previous agreement hinged on the Midnight Tea Party confirming these monsters' existence, and their safe entry into the fallen Arkansas. Only after these conditions were met would the Midnight Tea Party give them a copy of the map, yet the adventurer team now intended to wait until the monsters had been lured away from the Arkansas. "Here is your copy of the Fallen Ark map. Take it," Endless Scars said as she took a map from her bag and handed it to Sherfone. Endless Scars stunned the other Midnight Tea Party members. They had neither the existence of the monsters Sherfone had warned them about, nor had they confirmed the validity of Sherfeng's method to lure the monsters away. It was simply too risky to hand over the copy right now. "Thanks." Sherfone expressed his gratitude as he received the map. Endless Scars didn't respond to her team's questions. Instead, she evaluated Sherfone carefully before revealing an intimate smile and said, "This is what we've agreed upon, after all. However, this is our second transaction with each other, yet I still do not know your identity. I wonder if I can have the good fortune of a true introduction." "Certainly," Sherfone replied before taking off the black cloak that hid his identity and appearance. He then introduced himself. "I am Black Flame, Zero Wings Guild leader." His first reason for hiding his and his team's identities was that he didn't want others to know what Zero Wings' main force was up to. His second? He simply didn't want Endless Scars to know who they were. After all, Endless Scars was a Blackwater Corporation representative. Even if Endless Scars did not show any particular interest in Blackwater, at the end of the day, Zero Wing and Blackwater were enemies. It never hurt to be careful. However, the Fallen Ark map was more important. If Endless Scars found out that they were from Zero Wing, she might sever their agreement for the Fallen Ark map then and there. However, now that the map was in their hands, there was no reason to continue hiding their identities. Moreover, Endless Scars spoke on behalf of the Midnight Tea Party. It would only create an unnecessary rift between their teams if they refused to reveal themselves. In addition, the Midnight Tea Party and Blackwater were utterly unrelated. "It's you!" Endless Scars' eyes widened in shock. She had never imagined the group of experts before her to be Zero Wing members. Moreover, the team's leader was even Zero Wing's guild leader himself. "Thanks for the map. Hopefully, we'll find more chances to work together in the future." Shifeng chuckled. He then led his team and dashed into the fallen Arkansas. Meanwhile, Endless Scars was utterly dumbfounded as she stared at Shifeng's departing back. Big sis Endless, what's wrong? Cloud Yarn asked curiously when she saw Endless Scars' astonishment. Although it was indeed surprising that the other team's leader was Zero Wing's guild leader Black Flame, this wasn't the reason for Endless Scars' shock. In the past, their team had encountered many surprises. However, none of them had ever earned such a reaction from Endless Scars. This was her first time seeing such an expression on Endless Scars' face. Before today, she hadn't even thought that Endless Scars was capable of such an expression. Chapter 1127 Ark's Armory. Chapter 1127 Ark's Armory. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1127 Ark's Armory. Starmoon City, Blackwater's residence. Blackwater wasn't as prosperous as it had been. Very few players waited in front of the guild residence's entrance, eager to join. If not for the Blackwater Corporation's backing, not even these few players would be willing to join Blackwater. Not only had the Blackwater elite members that had died in the war in Stone Forest Town lost one level, but they had also lost a weapon or a piece of equipment. To make up for this loss, the elite players wouldn't have any time to help other guild members for some time. One of the main reasons that independent players willingly joined guilds for the guild experts' help in leveling and raiding dungeons to upgrade weapons and equipment. Practically every guild in God's domain provided this benefit. Players wouldn't want to join a guild that did not provide such a benefit. As a result, Blackwater's ordinary members had stagnated. They were now only capable of raiding party dungeons and small-scale team dungeons. They had no choice but to stay as far away as possible from 50-man or above team dungeons. Meanwhile, Qin Myun, Laughing Drunkard, and Lethal Gale entered the guild leader's office, one after another. Guild leader, here is the latest guild report you asked for, Qin Myun said as she placed the report on the table. At this moment, she wore a grave expression. The report clearly stated that over 20,000 elite members had already withdrawn from the guild, as many as the second-rate guild's total count. As for the ordinary members that withdrew from the guild, there were more than 100,000. However, when Abandoned Wave looked at these numbers, he maintained a relatively nonchalant attitude. Instead, he shifted his gaze towards Lethal Gale and asked, "How is the Blackwater trading firm coming along? The Candlelight trading firm's latest product, the exotic stamina potion, has been well received. Despite having already reduced the mana mixture's price to 10 silver per bottle, ordinary players are buying the exotic stamina potion instead. Right now, our shops are only seeing 1/3 of our past traffic," Lethal Gale said, shaking his head dejectedly. "Although our spies have already poked around in Candlelight, looking for information about the exotic stamina potion, it seems that only a select few of the trading firm's upper echelon know about the potion. As of now, we still do not know where to find the recipe." The exotic stamina potion had massively impacted the market. Setting aside how cheap it was, the mana mixture could not compare to its 10-hour duration. In addition, the mana mixture was only useful in dungeons, whereas the exotic stamina potion was useful in dungeons and the fields. At this moment, many ordinary players had given up on the regeneration potions and mana recovery potions in order to buy the exotic stamina potion. With the exotic stamina potion, players could grind monsters for longer periods. With the potion's effects, they did not even need to rest when traveling long distances, which allowed them to save plenty of time. Even Lethal Gale could not resist the temptation and had purchased 3 bottles for himself. After using the potion, he had to admit that it was a miracle potion. The potion had improved his leveling speed by roughly 20% to 30%. It was no wonder why many players were even willing to empty their coffers to buy the exotic stamina potion. Based on what he knew, the Candlelight Light trading firm had long since run out of the exotic stamina potion. As soon as Candlelight restocked, players would rip them from the shelves. Many large guild upper echelons had specifically visited the Candlelight trading firm to negotiate a deal for the potions. Right now, be it the guild's development or the trading firm's, Zero Wing was unstoppable. Good! Excellent! Contrary to expectations, Abandoned Wave didn't seem enraged. Rather, he began to laugh. Guild leader? Qin Miyun and Lethal Gale were utterly confused. Young Master Jing was greatly displeased with them. Most likely, they would receive instructions from their superiors in the next few days. At that time, none of them would escape punishment. This was especially true for Abandoned Wave, yet the man that was supposed to be worried and angry was actually laughing. Was the shock too much for him to handle? However, instead of responding to Qin Miyun and Lethal Gale's question, Abandoned Wave turned towards Laughing Drunkard and asked softly, Drunkard, did you finish what I asked of you? Guild leader, don't you trust me? Laughing Drunkard chuckled. Confidently, he continued, I've already sent details regarding Zero Wing's experts to the Miracle Guild. Miracle has confirmed that they will not give Zero Wing any chances of victory in tomorrow's match in the Dark Arena. Originally, he was not particularly optimistic of Zero Wing's loss in the Dark Arena tomorrow. However, after making a trip to the Miracle Guild and the detailed report he had provided the guild, his confidence that Zero Wing would lose in tomorrow's competition had grown. The odds for the upcoming competition had already been released. The odds were 1-3, with the majority of the bets on the Azura Battle Team. However, this was simply because only a few people knew that the Evil Dragon Battle Team was backed by the Miracle Guild. They had only discovered this due to the Blackwater Corporation's relationship with one of Miracle's upper echelons. It was extremely rare for the odds in the Dark Arena to be as high as 1-3. Normally, the odds were around 1-1.5. Seeing such a high payout rate, the Miracle Guild intended to go all out. Moreover, the guild aimed for a complete victory. The payout for a complete victory was 1-7. That was even high enough to tempt super guilds. A super first-rate guild like Miracle couldn't afford to miss this opportunity. Miracle's apex experts could even rival those of super guilds. Moreover, to guarantee their win in the competition, Miracle had secretly borrowed epic items from other large guilds. Even Zero Wing's apex experts, who were famed for their heaven-defying attributes, would be no match for the experts the Miracle intended to dispatch. Zero Wing's members were so powerful mostly because of their basic attributes. As for the experts that had reached the refinement realm or higher, there were only 5 in the guild. Among them, Black Flame would not participate in the Dark Arena. After all, the man was Zero Wing's guild leader. That left Yifeng, Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, and Violet Cloud. Among them, Fire Dance, Gentle Snow, and Violet Cloud had only recently reached the refinement realm. Without the attribute advantage, the only true fighting force on the Azura Battle Team was Yifeng. However, the competition in the Dark Arena was a 10-man team match. Good. Afterward, you 3 go and gather our guild's resources. When the time comes, we'll have to watch the competition as well. Abandoned Wave had not been as affected by the previous loss as Qin Miyun and Lethal Gale had thought. On the contrary, he had calmly thought of a way to turn the situation around. The first thing he needed to do was recover the guild's foundations, earning back the weapons, equipment, coins, and other items that the guild had lost in the war. The Dark Arena served as the perfect platform to do exactly that. Moreover, Blackwater's defeat was not without meaning. At the very least, their defeat had shown exactly how powerful Zero Wing's various experts were, and this information would help Miracle deal with Zero Wing. Meanwhile, after entering the Towering Temple, Shifeng had everyone use isolation scrolls before dashing through the labyrinth of empty corridors. As they had less than 20 minutes remaining, they would be hard-pressed to reach the Ark's inner region in time. The abyssal monsters had just woken and hadn't left the Ark yet. In the outer region's corridors, Shifeng's team occasionally encountered wandering fallen patrols. However, as Shifeng now had a map, these fallen patrols meant nothing to the team with his acute senses. Not only could Shifeng avoid the patrols, but he could also avoid any traps. So this is the Armory. After nearly 10 minutes, Shifeng discovered a tightly shut door. The words, War Armory, had been carved on the stone above the massive door. Upon seeing these words, Shifeng's heartbeat accelerated. The War Armory stored weapons of war specifically, and no other player had ever opened this War Armory. Chapter 1128 Difference between Mythic Monsters. Chapter 1128 Difference between Mythic Monsters. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1128 Difference between Mythic Monsters. As Shurfong stopped to look at the war armory, Minor Wind noticed red dots appear on his system map and reported. Guild leader, distant patrols are approaching our location. If we don't move now, I'm afraid that we'll be discovered. After Zero Wing's team had entered the Fallen Ark, Minor Wind had activated his scouting skill as he kept a lookout for any movement in their area. Although his scouting search area was reduced inside the Ark, he could sense for enemies within a 300-yard radius. That was enough for the team to respond before enemies reached them. How many? Shurfong asked. 2. Moreover, they're moving relatively quickly. They'll reach our location in 15 seconds at most. Minor Wind reported. 15 seconds? We'll be cutting it quite close. Shurfong frowned. Based on his estimates, even an assassin with their locksmith class at master rank would need roughly 20 seconds to open a room like the war armory. Unfortunately, their team didn't have a master locksmith. He also fully believed Minor Wind's estimate. A qualified ranger was not just a range damage dealer. Rangers' constant awareness of their surroundings and their judgment of various situations were their most important aspects. Although Minor Wind's combat standards were slightly lower than Zero Wing's other core members, his observation skills and judgment were top-notch. Guild leader, we don't have much time left. Gentle Snow urged as they had less than 8 seconds to prepare. Based on their location on the map, they were only 2/3 of the way to the Fallen Ark's inner region. If they couldn't reach the inner region before the system update began, when they logged back into the game, reaching that area would be far more difficult. They also needed to select a treasury and deal with the traps inside. Shurfong hesitated. In the past, the Fallen Ark had been a famous treasure trove in God's domain. However, as the inner region's traps were extremely dangerous, very few players were capable of obtaining any treasures whatsoever. This situation had also resulted in the various large guilds in giving up on the Arkansas. However, Shurfong never thought that he would actually come across an armory in the outer region. An armory might not mean much to an ordinary player, but to a guild, some of the more advanced weapons of war were even more valuable than fragmented legendary items. Forget it. We're giving up on the inner region. Let's take this armory for now. After giving the matter some thought, Shurfong settled for the armory. Right now, Zero Wing still lacked overall strength. It likely did not even have the power to defend a single city. However, if they could find a few advanced weapons of war here, they might make up for Zero Wing's lack of combat power. As long as they could construct and defend a city properly, the city's value would easily exceed that of 2 or 3 fragmented legendary items. Cola, you and Turtledove will tank the patrols. Don't let them near us. Everyone else, look for any nearby traps. Fire Dance, you'll be responsible for unlocking the door. Shurfong hurriedly commanded. Understood. Hearing this, everyone exploded into action. The 2 fallen patrols were similar to those they had encountered at the entrance. They were both level 63 Great Lords with 57 million HP. However, Cola and Turtledove had long since familiarized themselves with the patrol's attack patterns. Even without the 9-star polar domain, they were capable of dealing with the Great Lords. At the same time, Fire Dance began to unlock the door to the armory. As one of the Fallen Ark's secret rooms, the time it took to unlock the armory was secondary. The crucial issue was that the extremely complex unlocking method. One would have to start the process all over again if they made a single mistake. Only after removing the various locks could one finally open the secret room. Time passed quickly. After 1 minute, Fire Dance was only halfway through the door's locks. Guild leader, 2 more patrols are approaching, Minor Wind announced anxiously. If there were only 3 fallen patrols, their team could, more or less, manage. 4, however, would be a problem. As for trying to kill the patrols, that would be considerably foolish. Special lifeforms were immortal existences. Even after expending a lot of time and effort, the most they would get out of the endeavor was some EXP. After 10 minutes, the fallen patrols would be back on their feet and ready to fight once again. Moreover, with each resurrection, the fallen patrols would become stronger. Only a lunatic would try to kill them. Wumien, you'll come with me! Once Fire finishes unlocking the door, rush into the room. Remember, do not touch anything inside, Shifeng commanded. He then dashed towards the 2 new fallen patrols with Wumien. Shifeng wouldn't try to take on one of the fallen patrols directly. Instead, he activated Aura of Earth while deflecting the patrol's attacks. This way, not only could he reduce the damage he received, but he could also alleviate the burden on the team's healers. However, as time passed, a loud roar echoed from a distant corridor. The angry roar reverberated through the spacious corridor. Already? Shifeng's expression darkened. The abyssal monsters had awakened far sooner than he had anticipated. If these monsters discovered his teams, none of them would get out of here alive. Shifeng's team wasn't the only one who had heard the roar. The Midnight Tea Party's members, who waited outside the fallen ark quietly, heard the deafening roar as well. Black Flame really didn't lie. Breezewine could not help but inwardly celebrate when he heard this roar. The fact that this roar is so deep and can reach all the way out here means that this monster should be mythic rank at the very least. Fortunately, they had made the trade with Shifeng. Otherwise, even if they had activated the fallen ark by themselves after obtaining their Tier 2 classes, they'd have no way of completing their quest. The difference between mythic monsters' strength and Grand Lord's was simply too massive. Even if their entire team reached Tier 2, it wasn't likely that they could defeat a mythic monster of the same level, much less a mythic monster of a higher level. The other team members nodded in agreement. Despite Dark War and several other people's opinions about Shifeng, they had to admit that Shifeng had helped them enormously. Meanwhile, before the Fallen Ark's armory, Fire Dance finally unlocked the door to the secret room. Guild leader, the door's open. Good. You guys go in first. Cola starts slowly moving towards Armory. Opening the tightly shut door was undoubtedly good news to Shifeng. Immediately, he had everyone retreat towards the Armory. As Shifeng and the others reached the Armory's entrance, Shifeng, Cola, and the other MTs felt their bodies become heavy. It was as if they had been submerged in mud. It was extremely difficult to move. Not good! Those monsters have arrived! Get inside, quickly! Shifeng panicked. Immediately, he activated Heavenly Dragon's power and recovered his ability to move. He then took an aqua-blue magic scroll from his bag. This magic scroll was none other than his sole remaining Tier 4 magic scroll. The area they were in was not particularly large, but he understood how powerful those monsters were. Any players the abyssal monsters killed would not get off with just a lost level. If that were the case, players in the past wouldn't have given up on the Fallen Ark's treasures that easily. Rather, those abyssal monsters would extract the immortal souls from the players they killed. Not only would players lose 2 or 3 levels, but they also wouldn't be able to log into the game for over 10 days. Humans? Those souls, heaven-blessed individuals? Wonderful! It's been so long since I've tasted an immortal soul. As Cola and the others rushed into the armory, a cold voice reached their ears, making them shudder with fear. Suddenly, as if the fallen patrols had been struck, the team watched the great lords fly into the corridor's walls, their powerful metallic bodies flattening like a specimen under a microscope. Aside from Shifeng, none of the players could move. Why is such a powerful monster here? The abyssal monster's might far exceeded Gentle Snow and the rest of the team's expectations. Before the monster had even shown itself, it had already flattened the 4 fallen patrols into pancakes. They had become fish on a cutting board. Chapter 1129 Ransacking the Armory. Chapter 1129 Ransacking the Armory. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1129 Ransacking the Armory. Sure enough, a complete domain is really powerful. Shifeng was slightly stunned. The Fallen Ark's abyssal monsters were much stronger than he had imagined. It was no wonder why God's domain's various superpowers hadn't been a match for these monsters in the past. This was definitely the first time Shifeng had encountered a mythic monster that wielded a complete domain. Generally, only Tier 4 NPCs could use one. This was also the factor that provided Tier 4 NPCs the power to face Tier 4 mythic monsters. Right now, despite him having activated Heavenly Dragon's power, he could barely move his body. His joints even creaked as he moved. Oh? Someone can still move? As Shifeng moved, a cold, deep voice reverberated through everyone's minds. When the team members lifted their heads, they discovered that a humanoid creature, which was roughly 4 meters tall and covered in scales, had suddenly appeared before them. The creature had 2 blade-like arms and crimson eyes that were as large as an ordinary human's fist. 2 sets of jet-black wings also stretched from the creature's back. Soul Eater Lord, Dark Creature, Mythic Weakened. Level 67. HP 210, 000/210, 000. Every player gasped when they saw this creature. Despite being weakened, the creature was still a mythic monster. Moreover, the team despaired upon seeing his HP. Even a team of 1,000 experts would be cannon fodder against this monster, much less a 20-man team. We're doomed! As Aqua Rose watched the Soul Eater Lord gradually approach them, she could already see her and her teammates' instant death in her mind. However, Aqua Rose still did not know that any player the Fallen Ark's ancient abyssal monsters killed would not get away with losing a single level. What an interesting little fellow! It's a pity that your struggling is useless. Just become my soul's nourishment obediently, the Soul Eater Lord said as he widened his ferocious mouth. He could no longer wait to devour these players. When 30 yards separated the team from the Soul Eater Lord, Shifeng finally finished chanting the last verse of the incantation in his heart. He abruptly unfurled the dark blue magic scroll in his hands. Pointless resistance will only add to your pain and despair. The Soul Eater Lord had already noticed the Tier 4 magic scroll in Shifeng's hands. However, he disregarded the object because he was fully capable of dealing with any Tier 4 spells. If it were a Tier 5 magic scroll, he might be nervous. However, such magic scrolls had even been extremely rare during the ancient era, not to mention the present era. Oh, really? Shifeng smiled faintly. Immediately, an aqua-blue magic array formed beneath Shifeng's feet. Following which, with Shifeng as the center, a faint blue barrier expanded outward. Tier 4 Curse, Water Boundary. Water Boundary was not an attack-type curse. Rather, it was a defensive curse. The curse was even capable of blocking Tier 5 attacks. It was a kind of absolute defense. The curse had a radius of 20 yards and a duration of 30 seconds. After Water Boundary formed, Zero Wings members immediately felt the pressure dissipate as they regained their freedom of movement. Damn it! The Soul Eater Lord's expression twisted as the Water Boundary formed. It then began to assault the barrier. Boom! 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 The Soul Eater Lord was so fast that even Shifeng could barely see its movements. Everyone's hearts pounded as a series of expressions echoed throughout the fallen Arkansas. They were terrified that the Soul Eater Lord would break through the seemingly flimsy, light blue barrier. After glancing at the fluctuating, blue barrier, Shifeng shifted his attention away from the Soul Eater Lord as he commanded. Alright, get moving! We don't have much time left! As a Tier 4 defensive curse, Water Boundary could withstand the Soul Eater Lord's attacks, even if he were at his peak. The Soul Eater tribe's king, though, would have no problem shattering the barrier. Unfortunately, that kind of existence, which was as powerful as God's, was not in the current Arkansas. Following which, the Soul Eater Lord could only watch helplessly as Shifeng led his team into the Armory. After entering the Armory, Shifeng turned around and shut the door, immediately locking it. Guild leader, that monster can't break in here, right? Violet Cloud asked worriedly as she recalled how powerful the Soul Eater was. Relax. This is the Fallen Ark, one of the final weapons the gods created. Divine runes strengthen the Ark's interior. Even a Soul Eater king would have a hard time destroying the interior of the Ark, not to mention a Soul Eater Lord, Shifeng said nonchalantly. His companions could not help but release a sigh of relief when they heard Shifeng's reassurance. Now that the danger has been dealt with, Fire, you and Flying will disable the traps inside the armory. Everyone else, move carefully, Shifeng ordered. Looking at the time, he found that they had around 6 minutes before they had to log out of the game. If they could not remove the traps within the armory during these 6 minutes, by the time they logged back into the game, these traps would become much harder to disable. Hearing this, Fire Dance and Flying Shadow immediately went into action. As for the rest of the team, they let their gazes wander the armory. For a moment, they were stupefied. The armory was a massive treasure trove. There was a variety of tools on display, and every one was extremely tempting. Guild leader, look over there! Mana pulse cannons! They're even intermediate rank! During the war against the Star Alliance, Shifeng had spent 20,000 gold to purchase a basic mana pulse cannon. A single attack from the cannon could rival the might of a Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell. Moreover, the cannon had a range of 15,000 yards and a radius of 200 yards. Unfortunately, the cannon was very costly to use, with each shot requiring 1,000 magic crystals. Moreover, it had a long cooldown of around 3 to 4 minutes. Meanwhile, upon reading the intermediate mana pulse cannon's information, the team discovered that it was even more impressive than they had thought. Although its attack was roughly as powerful as a Tier 4 destruction spell, it had a range of 20,000 yards and a radius of 500 yards. It cost 2,000 magic crystals to fire a single round and similarly had a cooldown of around 3 to 4 minutes. The difference between a radius of 200 yards and 500 yards was simply outrageous. Furthermore, this armory actually had 2 intermediate mana pulse cannons. If Zero Wing had had these 2 cannons and a sufficient number of magic crystals during its battle against Blackwater, winning the war would have been far easier. However, rather than the mana pulse cannon, Shifeng's gaze stopped on a magical, steel car. He was quite familiar with this item. Movement-type defensive magic array. Although it was only a basic defensive magic array, it could be moved freely even after being activated. In the past, large guilds treated it like a mobile fortress. As long as this magic array had enough mana, it could block all Tier 3 attacks and lower. Meanwhile, its maximum radius could cover an entire basic town. Aside from the mana pulse cannons and movement-type defensive magic array, there were a large number of basic mana pulse bombs. Every bomb possessed the might of a Tier 3 spell and had a radius of 25 yards. They could be thrown up to a maximum of 50 yards. They were incredibly suited for individual players. To current players, these mana pulse bombs were godly weapons in group battles, as a single bomb could obliterate all players in a 25-yard radius. There were actually over 1,000 of such bombs. Shifeng had never imagined that a single armory would contain such a large harvest. With these items, the issue of his future city's defense was practically settled. Seconds passed, then minutes. When there were only 2 minutes before the system update began, Fire Dance and Flying Shadow had disabled 90% of the armory's traps. Only one trap set up around a stone altar was left. Guild leader, this trap is too complex. Even I can't disable it, Fire Dance exclaimed as she examined the trap before her. Even you can't disable it? Shifeng was surprised. They were still in the Ark's outer region. With Fire Dance being an advanced trap disabler, she should be able to deal with every trap here. It was only a matter of time. However, the fact that Fire Dance was unable to disable the trap spoke volumes about the stone altar's value. Since time was running out, Shifeng immediately removed Icarus's heart from his neck and passed it to Fire Dance. Fire Dance was momentarily dazed when she saw Icarus's heart. She had never expected such a powerful epic item to exist. Hurry! Use this to disable the trap, Shifeng instructed. Trap Disabler was a similar lifestyle class to the Appraiser class. However, it was not a particularly popular class. The Assassin class possessed a talent bonus that allowed them to level lifestyle classes like Locksmith and Trap Disabler far more easily. With Shifeng's command, Fire Dance recovered her wits and activated God's Blessing, upgrading her Trap Disabler class to the Master rank. Immediately, Fire Dance began to disable the trap on the stone altar. However, this trap would require a considerably long time to disable. Quick! We don't have much time left! Shifeng's anxiety grew when he saw only 30 seconds remaining. If Fire Dance failed, the next time they logged into the game, the consequence would not be limited to some lost time. Fire Dance also grew desperate. Her mind focused like never before as she frantically disabled the trap's mechanisms, one after another. There were only 10 seconds remaining. 5 seconds. 3 seconds. It's disabled! Fire Dance finally disabled the trap with only 2 seconds remaining, and she could not help but sigh in relief at her success. Following which, everyone's vision faded to black as they were sent to their individual God's domain offline rest spaces. Chapter 1130 Talent. Chapter 1130 Talent. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1130 Talent. Inside the offline rest space, Shifeng slowly opened his eyes. With this, all we need to do is wait for the system update to end and log back into the game. Shifeng could not help his growing excitement when he thought about the stone altar. Even the intermediate mana pulse cannons had only been protected by advanced traps. Whatever master traps protected definitely stored far more valuable treasures. Shifeng shifted his gaze to the system interface displayed before him. The interface showed 14 hours and 40 minutes before the system update completed. From this, Shifeng could tell that significant changes would shake God's domain. A nearly 15-hour-long system update. It's roughly the same duration as when the Fallen Ark had been activated in the past. Shifeng could not help but recall detailed information about the system update in the past. Every time God's domain underwent a system update, it, more or less, changed Guild's path of development. For example, the previous few system updates had gradually increased the importance of lifestyle classes in the various large guilds' eyes. Guild had even begun to invest a significant amount of resources to nurture their lifestyle classes. Similarly, the system update this time would change God's domain once more. There were many lifestyle classes in God's domain. They weren't limited to forgers, engineers, alchemists, enchanters, leatherworkers, tailors, chefs, and such. There were many other lifestyle classes that players did not pay much attention to, such as diviners, architects, appraisers, fraudsters, cultivators, tamers, scholars, magicians, locksmiths, and other minor subclasses. This latest update would gradually increase the importance of these minor subclasses in the game. Before the trap mechanisms in God's domain had been perfected, adventurer players who explored the fields could get by financially in the game relatively easily. In the fields, their main problem when they found treasure was the guardian monsters. Rarely would any player pay attention to the traps protecting the treasure. This was because of the only two possibilities when one tried to disable a trap. The first was that the trap could be disabled, although the time required depended on the player. The other possibility was that the trap could not be disabled. One wouldn't receive any kind of punishment for failing to disable a trap. As a result, players rarely paid much attention to the trap disabler class. However, after this system update, a third outcome would occur. A trap could be disabled, but failure came with a risk. If one failed to disable a trap, they would trigger the trap itself. Trap strengths varied. If players triggered a weaker trap, they might retain their lives. Even in the event of death, players would only suffer the normal death penalties. For stronger traps, however, players might have to pay more than a single level for their failure. Another example was the Magician subclass, one of the minor subclasses Shifeng had learned. A magician's role was to produce items such as magic scrolls and magic arrays. Although the Magician subclass was not as important as the Forger subclass, it was one of the essential subclasses in God's domain. Moreover, as the subclass increased its rank, it would serve a greater purpose. Due to the increased importance of the various minor subclasses, the large guilds began to nurture these subclasses to aid their guild's development. It seems that I'll have to get melancholic to start collecting purple dew and 5-colored flowers once I log back in. After some thought, Shifeng decided to start nurturing a batch of players with minor subclasses. Minor subclasses were not as difficult to improve as major subclasses. There was no need to expend a large stock of materials for trial and error. One simply needed to achieve a certain technical standard to rise through the ranks. Take the Magician subclass for example. If a player produced a basic magic array, they would become a basic magician. If they produced an intermediate magic array, they would become intermediate magicians. There was no need to accumulate a large number of proficiency points. Promotion solely depended on a player's technical skills. However, while there were no restrictions on learning minor subclasses, with players being allowed to learn over 10 minor subclasses, due to personal talent, not everyone could level a subclass to intermediate or advanced rank, much less master rank. Due to this, players should learn only the minor subclasses they were proficient at if they wished to advance to higher stages in the game. However, how was a player supposed to determine which minor subclass they were proficient at? In the past, the most popular way to test their abilities was the talent potion. As long as players drank the talent potion, the system would provide a series of tests. After completing these tests, the system would notify players about the subclass they were most suited for. This way, players would not have to waste their time researching whether they were suitable for a certain subclass or not. Of course, if players liked a particular subclass, they could learn it regardless of whether they had the talent. They just wouldn't be able to advance quickly. Meanwhile, the main materials for crafting the talent potion was purple dew and 5-colored flour. Shifeng also knew where to find the recipe. As long as he went there to grind, he should have no problems obtaining a few copies. After Shifeng finished planning his development, he decided to rest in the virtual space. Only at 7 in the morning did he exit his virtual gaming cabin. After Shifeng finished breakfast and did some light exercises, before he left to check on Zero Wing's new internal members in the dojo, he noticed his female assistant, who currently wore black working attire, waiting for him by the lounge's entrance. Head instructor, Chairman Xiao has an extremely important matter he wishes to discuss with you. He is waiting in the chairman's office right now, Liang Jing reported as she walked up to Shifeng, who wore blue sportswear. Got it. Shifeng nodded. In reality, even if Xiao Yu hadn't come looking for him, he would have likely sought the man out himself within the next few days. During his previous expansion of the Zero Wing workshop, he had recruited plenty of talented people. These people were all much stronger than the independent players he had recruited in God's domain. Although their levels in the game were still quite low, their combat standards were already higher ordinary elite players. In addition, he and Lei Bao normally trained these new recruits. It was only a matter of time before they could clear the trial tower's 4th floor. Once these people reached the 5th floor, they would become experts in the eyes of ordinary players. If they could reach the 5th floor's late stage, even large guilds would treat them like experts. However, Shifeng wasn't looking for ordinary experts. He wanted apex experts capable of turning the tides of war by themselves. It was extremely difficult to nurture such apex experts. First, he needed a sufficient amount of resources such as the S-rank nutrient fluid. However, Shifeng didn't have the connections he needed to gain a large quantity. Fortunately, Xiao Yu did. The Big Dipper Tower's 51st floor. This floor was specifically reserved for the chairman of the Big Dipper group. It was also the Big Dipper Tower's highest floor. From in the corridor, they could see the entirety of Jinhai City through the glass walls. Very few people in Jinhai City were ever invited to this floor. Even Liang Jing, Chairman Zhao's senior assistant, had never set foot on this floor. Generally, she waited for the chairman on the 50th floor. As Liang Jing followed Shifeng to the chairman's office, she sighed ruefully as she stared at Shifeng's back. If not for Director Xiao allowing her to bring Shifeng here, she would never have had the opportunity to see this floor. When Liang Jing opened the doors to the chairman's office, an office the size of a basketball court appeared before her eyes. 3 people sat before the room's French windows. Shifeng was familiar with all 3. One of them was Xiao Yu, another was Gan Xingding, the bald man who Fire Dance had thoroughly defeated, and the last Xiechuan, the handsome youth with a body as robust as Lei Bao's, known as the White Tiger Dojo's Fighting Genius. Chapter 1131 An Invitation That Cannot Be Refused. Chapter 1131 An Invitation That Cannot Be Refused. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1131 An Invitation That Cannot Be Refused. Why are they here? Shifeng frowned slightly as he eyed Xieqiwen and Gan Xingting, who sat on a sofa and chatted merrily with Xiaoyu. The White Tiger Dojo was currently Big Dipper's rival. As Shifeng walked up to the three people, Xiaoyu took the initiative to welcome him. Instructor Shi, you're finally here. Let me introduce you. This is White Tiger Dojo's rising star, Xieqiwen. As for our other guest, I believe that you've already met. Gan Xingting has already been appointed the acting head instructor of the White Tiger Dojo's branch in Jinhai City. Xiaoyu introduced the men to Shifeng. As Xiaoyu completed the introductions, Xieqiwen stared at Shifeng. Shifeng currently wore dark blue sportswear. He appeared extremely young for someone in his position. No matter how Xieqiwen looked at Shifeng, the latter looked like any ordinary youth. Shifeng did not exude the aura that was usually found on martial arts experts. If not for Gan Xingting providing him with information about Big Dipper beforehand, he would have assumed that Shifeng was a new student who had recently enrolled to the Big Dipper dojo. Hello, head instructor Shi. Xieqiwen greeted Shifeng without getting up from his seat. He simply looked at Shifeng, nodding slightly as he spoke with a courteous tone. I have heard of head instructor Shi's fame. Sure enough, the rumors were true. Hello? Shifeng gave with a brief, but polite response. As for Gan Xingting, he did not bother saying anything to Shifeng. In Gan Xingting's opinion, Shifeng was simply one of the Big Dipper group's puppets and did not possess any true ability. The dojo's true master must be the woman he had fought before, Fire Dance. In both strength and reaction capabilities, Fire Dance far surpassed him. He wouldn't even be surprised if she turned out to be the internal force expert the Big Dipper group had invited. Xieqiwen stood up and turned to look at Xiaoyu before saying, Chairman Xiao, since we've already told you why we are here, we'll take our leave now. When the time comes, I will welcome your arrival. Initially, he had waited here to catch a glimpse of Shifeng. Now that he had met the man in question and discovered that Shifeng was exactly as Gan Xingting had mentioned, he had no reason to stay. Following which, Xiaoyu sent both Xieqiwen and Gan Xingting to the door. He then had Liang Jing send them on their way. After the duo left, Shifeng asked, Chairman Xiao, may I know what business you wish to discuss? The White Tiger Dojo will be holding an opening ceremony in 4 days, and they have invited you and me to participate. At the same time, the White Tiger Dojo plans to hold a friendly competition during the ceremony and has invited the various training centers and dojos to participate as well. The match will involve teams of 3, and participants must be below the age of 20. The competition's champion will win 1 million credits and an invitation card to the Green God Company's annual auction. An invitation card to the Green God auction? Sure enough, the White Tiger Dojo is impressive. The White Tiger Dojo's wealth and influence surprised Shifeng. Practically everybody in the world knew about the Green God Company. The Green God Company was the sole producer of nutrient fluids, which was sold in practically every town and city around the world. It was an absolute giant. In this current era, who did not pay attention to their bodies? Who didn't want to live longer? Particularly, the S-rank nutrient fluid produced miraculous effects. However, as its production volume was low, it was extremely difficult to obtain. The Green God Company also held an auction once every year. In this auction, the company sold plenty of S-rank nutrient fluids. In addition, the company would introduce new products that were not available on the market. Only it was extraordinarily difficult to gain an invitation. A company like the Big Dipper Group did not qualify to receive an invitation. However, this wasn't surprising. After all, not a single person or company in Jinhai City qualified. Most likely, only an existence like the White Tiger Dojo, which nurtured international-level fighters consistently, qualified. After all, in this era, where everyone paid attention to their physical fitness, the various international training centers and dojos were the Green God Company's main customers. I know, right? In previous years, we've offered $5 million to purchase an invitation card. However, we have never actually managed to buy one. Hence, head instructor Sure, I was wondering if you could select a few members from the Big Dipper Dojo to participate in this friendly competition? Xiao Yu asked anxiously. Although he knew that the White Tiger Dojo wanted to flaunt its might through this friendly competition and solidify its position in Jinhai City, the invitation card to the Green God auction was simply too tempting to give up. This invitation card was a pass that allowed one to purchase S-rank nutrient fluids. At the same time, one would encounter people of high social standing. If he could form some kind of relationship with some of these influential people, it might help the company's development in the future. Hence, even if he knew it was a trap, he couldn't refuse it. Chairman Xiao, you should know that the dojo's members have only recently joined. Even the powerful fighters are no match for the White Tiger Dojo's elite geniuses. Shifeng replied as he shook his head. Since the White Tiger Dojo dared to put up such a tempting prize, it was obvious that the dojo was confident in claiming the prize for itself. During the competition, the dojo would definitely send geniuses from its main branch to participate and teach the various dojos and training centers in Jinhai City a lesson that they would never forget. I heard that head instructor Sure has several experts in your workshop. What if they participate instead? Xiao Yu asked eagerly. He had long since learned about the Zero Wing workshop from Liang Jing. According to Liang Jing, the workshop members were powerful fighting experts. The woman named Fire Dance, in particular, had even defeated Gan Xingding in a single move. Chairman Xiao, I understand what you are trying to say, but unfortunately, they are all over 20 years old, Shifeng said, smiling bitterly. Of course, he wanted Kola and the others take part in the competition. However, they were all over the age limit. Only Violet Cloud met this requirement. However, the competition was a group match. If he could not fill the 2 remaining spots, they wouldn't be able to take part anyway. As for the members that had recently joined the Zero Wing workshop, although they had improved significantly, they were no match for the White Tiger Dojo's elite members. The White Tiger Dojo really is crafty. I never thought that they would have accounted for this as well. A disappointed expression dominated Xiao Yu's face. Despite the valuable opportunity to develop the company, he had no way of grasping it. We still have 4 days. It isn't entirely impossible to find suitable experts. However, it won't be easy. Shifeng suddenly recalled several core members in the guild that were younger than 20. Only, none of them had come to Jinhai City to participate in Zero Wing's special training. Xiao Yu's eyes shone at Shifeng's words. Immediately, he said, If head instructor Sure has any requirements, please don't hold back. Since Chairman Xiao has offered, things will be easier on my side. Upon hearing Xiao Yu's assurance, Shifeng said, If we wish to defeat the White Tiger Dojo, I'll need roughly 10 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluids. Although those several core members possessed a wealth of combat experience, their physical attributes were simply too low. Meanwhile, unlike virtual combat, real-life combat relied heavily on a person's physical attributes. If he wanted to improve their combat power in the real world quickly, the only way to do so was by pushing them past their brain's limits and utilizing the S-rank nutrient fluids to recover. Only this method would rapidly improve their body's overall strength. He could also nurture the guild's experts, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Chapter 1132 Butterfly Effect. Chapter 1132 Butterfly Effect. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1132 Butterfly Effect. 10 bottles? Xiao Yu's heart skipped a beat when he heard Shifeng's request. S-rank nutrient fluids were not cabbages that one could purchase easily. It was difficult to buy a bottle even if one could afford it. People around the world referred to the S-rank nutrient fluid as the water of life. A bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid could easily go for 1 million credits. Even Xiao Yu himself was only willing to drink 1 bottle per year to repair the damaged cells in his body, significantly slowing the aging process. The S-rank nutrient fluid was a treasure to well-known international fighters. Normally, They would only consume a bottle if they were heavily injured. Even drinking A-rank nutrient fluids during normal training was considered a luxury. Previously, to recruit Shifeng into Big Dipper, he had utilized his connections and spent a significant sum to obtain a batch. No matter how he looked at it, buying another 10 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluids to obtain the Green God Company's invitation was not a worthwhile transaction. After all, his main goal in obtaining the invitation card was to purchase S-rank nutrient fluid and other new products the Green God Company intended to offer. He was still uncertain about how many bottles he could purchase in the auction. It was simply too risky to invest 10 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluid right off the bat. That's right. I'll need 10 bottles at the very minimum. Shifeng wasn't lying. Void steps placed a huge burden on the human brain. Without the in-depth healing the S-rank nutrient fluid provided, one would risk their life by using the technique. Hence, whenever he trained the guild's core members, he warned them that, if they did not have any S-rank nutrient fluids on hand, they were absolutely not allowed to practice void steps excessively. If it is money you are worried about, I can pay half the cost. However, I want a spot on the Green God Company's invitation card. You'll pay half of it? After giving the matter some thought, Xiao Yu agreed and said, All right, I'll try to find a way to get the 10 bottles. However, they will cost slightly above market price. Every invitation card allowed 2 people to attend the auction. It did not matter if he shared one with Shifeng. To further develop itself, the Big Dipper group had already invested a large sum into the new dojo. They had also spent a lot on advertising. Hence, the company was somewhat tight on funds. If Shifeng were willing to cover half of the S-rank nutrient fluids cost, investing in Shifeng's group was no different than their previous attempt of purchasing the Green God auction invitation card for 5 million credits. Only, unlike Shifeng, that plan hadn't succeeded. As for whether Shifeng had the money to pay up, he had long since ordered Liang Jing to investigate the man's finances. Recently, God's domain had become increasingly popular around the world. Many industry giants had already invested in the game. It was definitely possible to earn a lot of money through God's domain. Moreover, based on what he had heard from Liang Jing, Shifeng's workshop was considerably large. Moreover, more companies had invested in the workshop. At this point, the workshop had begun mass recruiting full-time gamers. It was obvious that Shifeng earned quite an income from the game. He shouldn't have any issues spending several million credits at a moment's notice. Now that God's domain was so popular, even Xiao Yu had considered establishing a workshop. Based on what he had heard from his connections, he learned that gaming workshops focused on God's domain earned far more than they had in past virtual reality games. God's domain also had far more players. However, expanding the Big Dipper group took priority. Once the Big Dipper group had grown, it would become far more profitable than any gaming workshop or guild. After all, more people had begun to take their physical training more seriously after discovering God's domain. Unfortunately, what Xiao Yu did not know was that Shifeng's workshop was more profitable than he imagined. After Shifeng finalized his arrangements with Xiao Yu, he returned to Zero Wing's training room. Only the workshop's official members had access to this room. Shifeng had specifically instructed Liang Jing to stock the room with various training equipment. These machines would help strengthen a person's reaction speed and evasive maneuvers. Blackie, contact Shadow Sword and Turtledove. Have them come to Jinhai City as quickly as possible. Report the travel expenses as a workshop expenditure. Shifeng instructed Blackie, who was currently occupied with basic training. Shadow Sword and Turtledove had been members of a certain dojo before they had joined Zero Wing. They were both younger than 20. However, after officially becoming Zero Wing core members, Shifeng had both of them leave their dojos. After all, becoming a Zero Wing core member was basically a formal job. They had to make God's domain their main priority. After they left their previous dojos, aside from playing God's domain, they normally exercised at a local gym. All of their attention had shifted to God's domain. However, as Zero Wing had yet to establish its own company officially and the purchasing agreement for Ouroboros's training center wasn't finalized, Shifeng hadn't invited them to take part in special training with the others. "We're having them here now?" Blackie shot Shifeng a curious look. Suddenly his expression shifted to one of excitement as he asked, "Is the training center ready?" He had already heard about the matter from Shifeng. Ouroboros's training center specialized in nurturing gaming experts. Setting aside its numerous facilities, it had an advanced virtual system in which players could train. Of course, Ouroboros's training center wasn't as advanced as the Secret Pavilion's simulated training system. However, it was far more efficient than a ton of people competing for the 10 black cards. Most importantly, with the acquisition of Ouroboros's training center, Zero Wing would finally have its own headquarters. They would no longer have to borrow someone else's facilities. Like the core members of those first-rate guilds, they could then walk into their luxurious training centers in the city center every day. "No," Shifeng said, shaking his head. "Qingxue is still negotiating the price for the training center. I want them here for another matter." Although the Blackwater's defeat had indeed dealt a major blow to the several companies backing Ouroboros, it was not an easy task to buy the training center's remaining shares. If they discovered Zero Wing's true goal, they might demand a far higher price than what Zero Wing had planned on. Unless something forced these companies were forced to sell the shares in a hurry, Shifeng had to let Bai Qingxue find a way to obtain the shares cheaply. His reply disappointed Blackie. However, he suddenly thought of something else as he said, "Brother Feng, when you went to your meeting, someone came to the workshop asking for you. However, I told him that you're in a meeting, so he's been waiting in the lounge. Do you want to meet him right now?" "Who is it?" "It's that youth that Big Sis Fire flattened. I think his name is Zipping?" Blackie responded, somewhat uncertain. "He came on his own volition." "Interesting. I just so happen to be free, so I might as well meet with him." Shifeng thought back to the bait he cast. He hadn't expected to hook Zipping so quickly. However, after giving the matter some thought, he found it reasonable. Now that Xiechuan was in Jinhai City, as Zipping's greatest romantic rival, how could the boy sit by and do nothing? If Zipping remained passive, Xiechuan would definitely take the girl he loved. This was his last chance to do something. Only this development had occurred sooner than Shifeng had anticipated. The current timeline was deviating further away from the one he remembered. Following which, Shifeng entered the training room's lounge. Zipping sat on the lounge's sofa, his legs shaking slightly. He looked quite nervous. "What business do you have with me?" Shifeng asked slowly as he examined the fighter before him. Seeing Shifeng, Zipping stood up abruptly, anxiety flashing in his eyes as he asked, "Didn't you say that, as long as I join Zero Wing's workshop, you'll tell me how to become stronger? Is that offer still valid?" Hall Master Jiang had already announced his intentions of driving his daughter, Jiang Lingyu, closer to Xiechuan. If he did not achieve some sort of feat quickly, he would be too late. Chapter 1133 The Difference Brought About by Time. Chapter 1133 The Difference Brought About by Time. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1133 The Difference Brought About by Time. "Of course, it's still valid." Shifeng provided a definitive answer. "However, didn't your White Tiger Dojo bar you from joining any gaming workshops?" Zipping fell silent upon Shifeng's question. He had been determined not to join Zero Wing's workshop. After all, he was recognized as an elite member in the White Tiger Dojo. If given enough time, he would gain Hall Master Jiang's recognition. However, Xiechuan's sudden appearance in Jinhai City significantly reduced the time he had to make any notable achievements. Xiechuan was already a well-known national fighter. Now, the White Tiger Dojo's main branch had decided to cultivate Xiechuan and prepare him for the international stage. On the other hand, he hadn't even reached the national threshold. With Hall Master Jiang's personality, he definitely had no hopes of furthering his relationship with Jiang Lingyu. Right now, his only way of getting Hall Master Jiang's recognition was to grow a lot stronger within a short time. At the very least, he needed to become a fighter on the national level. Only then would Hall Master Jiang even consider handing his daughter over to him. To build his strength quickly, The only way he could think of was by joining Zero Wing's workshop. There wasn't actually a rule or regulation in the White Tiger Dojo that disallowed joining a gaming workshop, and growing stronger was far more important than violating Gonshingting's rules. If I join Zero Wing's workshop, how much stronger can I become within a month? Yu Zipping was desperate to grow stronger. However, he was suspicious about how much stronger the Zero Wing workshop could help him become. I knew you would ask something like this. Since you're curious, how about you spar with one of our workshop's new members? Shifeng suggested, chuckling. Fortunately, you're already familiar with this person. Someone I am familiar with? Yu Zipping gave Shifeng a skeptical look. Follow me. Shifeng did not bother to explain as he left the lounge. Yu Zipping promptly followed him, curious about his opponent. In the White Tiger Dojo, his status was relatively high. Not only had he become an intermediate disciple at the young age of 18, but he even ranked near the top among intermediate disciples. He was only a short time from becoming an advanced disciple. If he became an advanced disciple in the White Tiger Dojo at his age, he would definitely qualify to participate in the National Youth Fighting Competition. Inside Zero Wing's training room, many of Zero Wing Workshop's new members were preoccupied with their basic training. When they noticed Shifeng lead an indifferent youth into the room, they stopped and looked at Yu Zipping curiously. Who's that? A new member? No, I know that guy. He was one of the fighters that came to the dojo to make trouble, but got a beating from Big Sis Fire instead. What unfortunate fools! Big Sis Fire never shows mercy in a fight. She is exactly like Instructor Lei in this aspect. Do you think that guy is looking to challenge Big Sis Fire again? Everyone in the training room had their assumptions about Yu Zipping's intentions. As for whether Yu Zipping had any chance of actually defeating Fire Dance, the thought never even entered their minds. In their eyes, Yu Zipping would need a miracle to survive against the woman for longer than 5 seconds. As for the youth defeating Fire Dance? Had anyone ever seen an ordinary human win against a monster before? After Shifeng entered the training room, he turned to a slim youth that looked to be roughly 20 years old and said, Lu Xiu, come over here for a second. We'll be testing your strength today. Understood. Lu Xiu hurriedly responded. Lu Xiu? When Yu Zipping saw Lu Xiu walking over, the youth wore a strange expression. Previously, when they had shown up to make trouble for the Big Dipper Dojo, Lu Xiu had chosen to leave the White Tiger Dojo and take part in the Zero Wing Workshop's test. As an intermediate disciple of the White Tiger Dojo, Yu Zipping was very familiar with Lu Xiu's standards. The latter was just barely as strong as an intermediate disciple. Hence, he had been happy about Lu Xiu's decision to leave the dojo. After all, not everyone could succeed in the world of fighting. Lu Xiu might have a better future if he joined a gaming workshop instead. However, when he realized that Shifeng had selected Lu Xiu to be his opponent, he found the matter laughable. Just how much did Shifeng underestimate him? Alright, you two, get in the arena. Your time limit is 3 minutes, Shifeng instructed, not explaining further. Shifeng's words instantly attracted everyone's attention. Blackie merrily shouted, We have a good show coming up. I'll be the bookkeeper. The betting ratio is 1-5. Whoever bets on Yu Zipping will get 5 times their wager if he wins. Don't miss this opportunity. Alright, I'll bet on Lu Xiu. I'll bet on Lu Xiu as well. I'll bet 1 bottle of 100-berry wine on Lu Xiu's win. In the end, nobody bet on Yu Zipping. Blackie's expression twisted. However, among those present, Yu Zipping had the ugliest expression. He was only a step away from becoming an advanced disciple in the White Tiger Dojo, yet in the eyes of these gamers, he seemed to be some random passerby not worth their attention. Lu Xiu felt an immense pressure on his shoulders. Similar to Yu Zipping's familiarity with his strengths, he, too, understood Yu Zipping's power. He had never imagined that Shifeng and Zero Wing Workshop's core members expected him to win. No matter how he thought about it, that was impossible. Upon seeing both fighters in their positions, Shifeng shouted, Begin! Lu Xiu, don't hold back and show me everything you've got. I'm curious to see what you've accomplished in the Zero Wing workshop since you've joined, Yu Zipping told Lu Xiu seriously. Lu Xiu nodded and charged at Yu Zipping. Lu Xiu launched a straight punch towards Yu Zipping, his fist pushing a strong gust of wind into the latter's face. Lu Xiu's punch was so fast that Yu Zipping barely caught a glimpse of it. So fast. Yu Zipping could not help his surprise. Lu Xiu's punch was far faster and more accurate than it had been in the past. However, Yu Zipping was no ordinary fighter. Diverting the approaching fist with one hand, Yu Zipping sidestepped and rushed forward, slamming his body into Lu Xiu. As if Lu Xiu had expected the move, he quickly adjusted his footwork as his fist was redirected. Twisting his body, he circled to Yu Zipping's back, avoiding the latter's body slam. He dodged it? Yu Zipping was slightly surprised. Yu Zipping regained his composure as he turned and continued his fierce assault against Lu Xiu. Every one of Yu Zipping's moves contained both deadly speed and precision, making them extremely difficult to parry. However, contrary to Yu Zipping's expectations, Lu Xiu didn't become flustered, and the attacks didn't land. Rather, with nimble movements and footwork, he systematically dodged one attack after another. After Yu Zipping's barrage ended, Lu Xiu realized that Yu Zipping was exhausted. Immediately, Lu Xiu took advantage of the opportunity and dove in for the kill. Yu Zipping, knowing he was in a bad position, could only throw a punch of his own to deter Lu Xiu's assault. However, Lu Xiu showed no signs of avoiding the hit. On the contrary, Lu Xiu continued straight towards Yu Zipping's punch. As Yu Zipping's fist was about to collide with Lu Xiu's face, however, the latter abruptly tilted his head. Yu Zipping's fist brushed past Lu Xiu's cheek, leaving a bloodied cut. However, this allowed Lu Xiu to move into Yu Zipping's guard. Combining his speed and strength, Lu Xiu sent an open palm strike at Yu Zipping's neck. This strike forced Yu Zipping to retreat by 3 steps, feeling a little faint. Meanwhile, Lu Xiu took this opportunity to land another palm strike on his opponent's chest. Immediately, the attack sent Yu Zipping sprawling to the ground. The victor of this match, Lu Xiu. From the start of the match to Yu Zipping's collapse, Lu Xiu felt as if he had been dreaming. He had the weird feeling that Yu Zipping had gone easy on him. Why else would Yu Zipping have had so many holes in his defense? Moreover, in Lu Xiu's opinion, Yu Zipping's attack methods had been monotone. It was as if Yu Zipping had begged him to dodge the attacks. However, in Shifeng's opinion, Lu Xiu's win wasn't unexpected. Since joining Zero Wing, Lu Xiu had experienced many life-or-death battles. He also frequently attended Lei Bao's training sessions. Both provided plenty of combat experience. Lu Xiu also used to be one of the White Tiger Dojo's intermediate disciples. In terms of his physique, he wasn't any weaker than Yu Zipping. Lu Xiu had simply lacked combat experience. However, during his time in Zero Wing, Lu Xiu had accumulated far more combat experience than Yu Zipping. Yu Zipping's defeat wasn't unusual. The first thing Yu Zipping saw after regaining consciousness was Lu Xiu. How did he improve so much so quickly? A bitter feeling swam in his heart as he looked at Lu Xiu. He knew why he had been defeated. The fight might have looked like a deadlock, but the difference in their combat experience was simply too vast. Right now, Lu Xiu moved like an expert that had lived through hundreds of battles. Lu Xiu may even possess more combat experience than the White Tiger Dojo's advanced disciples. Yet, how much time had passed since Lu Xiu had joined the Zero Wing workshop? How could he have gained that much combat experience in such a short time span? You've seen how much Lu Xiu has improved for yourself. What do you think of my place now? Shifeng asked, laughing. Will you really teach me everything if I join Zero Wing's workshop? Yu Zipping asked anxiously. He stared at Shifeng with anticipation. Shifeng could not help but sigh ruefully at the tense Yu Zipping. No one would ever have imagined that this youth before him would actually become the Tier 5 berserker known as Silent Blade. Yu Zipping was just as talented as Xiechuan. However, Xiechuan was slightly older and had a far stronger family background. If one wanted to improve their physique rapidly, intense training wasn't enough. A fighter also needed to replenish the energy they consumed. Even the most common C-rank nutrient fluid cost 400 credits. Fighters who trained arduously every day needed at least 1 bottle per day. That meant that one would have to spend 12,000 credits on C-rank nutrient fluids in a single month. Ordinary households couldn't afford that expenditure. There was even less need to mention B-rank nutrient fluids, which cost 1,000 credits per bottle. Dojos and training centers were only willing to sign contracts with and nurture people with outstanding talent. Ordinary members wouldn't have access to the privilege. However, even contracted members only received C-rank nutrient fluids. Only those geniuses would be given B-rank nutrient fluids. As for Zipping, the White Tiger Dojo had only offered him an ordinary contract, providing 1 bottle of C-rank nutrient fluid each day. However, Siechuan was different. Siechuan did not even need the support of the White Tiger Dojo, as his household provided A-rank nutrient fluids to fine-tune his body. A-rank nutrient fluids cost 10,000 credits per bottle. Not only were A-rank nutrient fluids capable of healing injuries that normally went unnoticed, but they could also develop a person's brain cells. Even if Zipping and Siechuan were equally talented, the difference in their strengths at the end of the day was like the difference between heaven and earth. Furthermore, Siechuan's household had invited powerful fighters and instructors to help the man gain a plethora of combat experience. Aside from talent, Zipping was weaker than Siechuan in almost every aspect. How could he possibly be a match for Siechuan? Meanwhile, Jiang Tianyuan, Jiang Lingyun's father, highly valued strength. It was only a matter of course for him to choose Siechuan. Chapter 1134 Test Evaluation. Chapter 1134 Test Evaluation. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1134 Test Evaluation. Noticing Shifeng's long moment of silence, Zipping grew nervous. Zipping had already seen how much Lu Xiu had improved. Despite having recently joined the Zero Wing workshop, Lu Xiu could display strength like never before. If Zipping told the other White Tiger Dojo members about this, nobody would believe him. In any case, he was now sure that, by joining and training in the Zero Wing workshop, he could become strong enough to get a ticket to the National Youth Fighting Competition before this year's qualifiers. If he improved sufficiently, his results might even be quite good. Although he still wouldn't be a match for Siechuan, with the advantage of his age, Hall Master Jiang would, more or less, consider giving Zipping his daughter instead of outright rejecting him. If you join Zero Wing's workshop, you won't miss out on any training. Before that, however, we have to see whether or not you can pass the workshop's test. Based on your performance, you'll be offered a corresponding contract, Shifeng explained. Of course, Lu Xiu's standards are already quite high. He has already become a reserve corps member in our workshop, and we're providing various benefits to nurture him. Above that are the reserve main force member slots. If you achieve that standard, you'll receive even heavier emphasis from the workshop. The resources we'll invest in you at that time will definitely surprise you. To put it simply, what benefits you receive are up to you. However, one thing to note is that the higher your position is, the greater the workshop's restrictions will be. If you become one of the workshop's reserve main force members, you'll need to leave the White Tiger Dojo and focus on the workshop. Zipping nodded in response, not particularly surprised by Shifeng's explanation. He had no intentions of becoming a reserve main force member. He was fine with becoming a reserve corps member. This way, he could continue his development in the White Tiger Dojo. Following which, Shifeng had Blackie lead Zipping to take the foundation tests. The workshop's tests were very simple. They tested for an applicant's reaction speed, observation, and judgment. As long as they performed well in these aspects, even if they had never received training from a gaming guilds before, they could get by fairly well in God's domain. Once Zero Wing nurtured these people, both in the game and in the real world, they could very quickly become fifth-floor experts in the trial tower. Shifeng had always planned for his guild to walk the path of the elite. Hence, he was very strict when recruiting internal members. Zero Wing's evaluations fell into 5 grades: D, C, B, A, and S. Various large guilds had created these grades in the past during their own internal member recruitment. It was a standard method. Those who earned a D grade were considered ordinary. Generally, large guilds only pick people who earned a C when recruiting internal members. In other words, people who were slightly more than ordinary in the various aspects. This way, these guilds' investments had a higher likelihood of greater return. To become a super guild's internal member, one generally needed to earn a B in their evaluation. Although the difference was only one rank, a B grade player could easily defeat a C grade player of the same level. This was similar to the wooden barrel theory. The amount of water a wooden barrel could contain was not determined by the longest plank of wood. Rather, it depended on the shortest plank of wood. This was also why, despite there being countless people applying to join super guilds as internal members each year, very few actually managed it. The internal members Zero Wing recruited were separated into two groups. To become a core member, one needed to earn a high C. Meanwhile, main force members needed a B at the very minimum. The guild had very few members who had earned an A. Even super first-rate guilds and super guilds hungered for such talent, much less Zero Wing. After Yu Zipping completed his test, Blackie ran to Sir Fong and handed him Yu Zipping's results. "Brother Fong, this Yu Zipping kid is really impressive. His scores are the highest I've ever seen. Based on your tests, he actually managed to score a high A in everything. His observational skills even earned an S." Blackie reported excitedly. "It seems that he should be quite talented in God's domain. However, his future achievements will depend on him." Sir Fong chuckled as he read the results the system had provided. This outcome didn't surprise him in the least. After all, Yu Zipping had been a Tier 5 berserker in the past. At his peak, he had even ranked 58th on the God's Domain experts list. Players who had earned such high ranks at that time were of much higher quality than present players. After all, God's Domain had been a second world for people back then. Far more experts had competed with each other in the game. Placing within the top 60 ranks had been dozens of times more difficult than it was now. If not for the fact that Yu Zipping had joined God's Domain later than others, he might have achieved an even higher rank. It's a pity that he only chose to become a core member. If he wanted to join Zero Wing's main force, with his potential, he could reach far greater heights. Blackie sighed. Sir Fong only tested a person's current talent, but talent wasn't a constant. As long as one continued to develop their mind, their talent would rise as well. The fact that Yu Zipping was already so talented meant that his starting point was much higher than others. If he wanted to grow stronger, he still required training and resources. Relax. Now that he has already set foot on Zero Wing's boat, I believe that he will, sooner or later, join our main force. Sir Fong chuckled as he clapped Blackie's shoulder. Following which, according to his daily schedule, Sir Fong proceeded with training his members. As the sun began to set, Shadow Sword and Turtledove arrived at Zero Wing's workshop. When Sir Fong met the two for the first time, he discovered that they both looked much younger than in God's Domain. Moreover, they were only 19 years old, only 1 year older than Yu Zipping. However, although the two's combat experience trampled over Yu Zipping's, they were physically much weaker than Yu Zipping. According to the White Tiger Dojo's evaluation standards, they were not even fit to become basic disciples. However, this wasn't unusual. Neither Shadow Sword nor Turtledove had received much attention from their previous dojo. Their dojo hadn't wanted to contract either of them. After the two arrived, Sir Fong split the 10 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluids, which Xiao Yu had Liang Jing deliver some time ago, between Shadow Sword and Turtledove. These S-rank nutrient fluids should be enough for them to train void steps for a considerable amount of time. S-rank nutrient fluids? Yu Zipping gaped in shock when he saw the exquisite coolers Shadow Sword and Turtledove were carrying. He had seen the coolers used to store S-rank nutrient fluids many times. After all, when the White Tiger Dojo's advanced disciples performed exceptionally well, the dojo rewarded them with S-rank nutrient fluids. As far as he could remember, the last time the dojo awarded S-rank nutrient fluids was when one of the geniuses at the main headquarters got 10th place in the National Youth Fighting Competition. The dojo had boasted about this achievement, so much so that it had rewarded that youth 2 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluids. That youth had treated those bottles like family treasures, only using them when he was severely injured. Yet, Shirfong had given Shadow Sword and Turtledove 5 bottles each without hesitation. What was this? Could the Green God Company be backing the Zero Wing Workshop? The thought hovered in the back of Yu Zipping's mind. There was no other explanation. A gaming workshop like Zero Wing had actually given 10 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluids to 2 people. This was far beyond extravagant. This was simply being a spendthrift. If he had received them, those 10 bottles would last him 10 years. After Shirfong finished instructing Shadow Sword and Turtledove on what they needed to do, he returned to his own room. There were less than 10 minutes before God's Domain's system update completed. After drinking a bottle of A-rank nutrient fluid, Shirfong entered his gaming cabin and logged into God's Domain. Chapter 1135 Resource Competition. Chapter 1135 Resource Competition. Hellscythe_Vampire Cat. Chapter 1135 Resource Competition. Huh! The interface changed? When Shirfong logged back into his rest space, he suddenly discovered that plenty of changes had occurred. Originally, the rest space was an empty space with only a massive interface display and nothing else. Now, however, the dimly lit rest space had a set of stone doors 10 meters tall with ancient runes carved on each door, lending them an ancient ambience. Meanwhile, at a corner of the doors was a system interface. Mind Space System. Owner Yifeng. Mind Space. Inactive. Activation conditions. Own a private space under your own name. Private space must also be located in a city at the very minimum. Space size unknown. System. Scan discovers that you own a private space in White River City. Do you wish to activate your mind space? The system has already been updated to such a degree? Shirfong could not help but sigh as he looked at the familiar set of stone doors. The previous system update had introduced the mind space system but had not actually applied it to God's Domain. Only the related files had been added into the game, so that the main God system could gradually phase it into the game. At the same time, the addition could also attract the attention of the various international corporations and let them know about God's Domain's uniqueness. However, after the update this time, the mind space system could be said to have truly been activated. From now on, as long as players had a private space of their own in the game, they would be able to activate their mind space. With a sufficient number of 7 luminaries crystals, they could also expand and perfect their mind spaces. The mind space was different from God's Domain. In God's Domain, players could connect to the official forums to search for relevant information there but nowhere else. However, inside the mind space, players could connect directly to the internet. Whether it was for work or shopping, players could do all that through their mind space. Players could even contact mobile phones in the real world and engage in conversation. In addition, players could change the environment in the mind space to their liking, creating their own virtual world. Most importantly, the mind space shared the same flow of time as God's Domain. In the mind space, one could enjoy twice the amount of time they had in the real world. Moreover, the flow of time in the mind space could also be sped up further, though at a very huge cost. In a limited life, who did not want to live longer? The official activation of the mind space system meant that the competition for resources in God's Domain had also officially begun. In the future, competition in God's Domain definitely would not be as peaceful as before. It would even become normal for everyone to fight over the 7 luminaries crystal while disregarding all costs. And to contest for more 7 luminaries crystals, everyone would definitely continuously strengthen themselves, which would intensify the competition over weapons, equipment, and tools in turn. Shirfong grew worried just thinking about what was about to come. Nevertheless, now that the era of resource competition had begun, he had no choice but to get his hands on some of the 7 luminaries crystals that he knew the whereabouts of as soon as possible. However, it was also not that easy to get these 7 luminaries crystals. 7 luminaries crystals were exceedingly rare in God's Domain. Even an entire kingdom would have only a limited amount. Most importantly, unlike magic crystals, 7 luminaries crystals could not be stored in a player's bag space, nor could they be transported via teleportation arrays. Players could only carry them by hand or by transport carriages. However, many variables could occur when one was conveying 7 luminaries crystals over long distances. Robbery by incomparably powerful NPCs would not be surprising. After all, 7 luminaries crystals were equally important items to NPCs. However, in Shifeng's opinion, the most criminal setting placed by the main god system would still have to be the fact that 7 luminaries crystals could not be disguised. The 7 luminaries crystal contained mana of extremely high purity and density. Just its presence alone could cause a change to the ambient mana, which allowed players and NPCs to discover it readily. Without a sufficiently powerful transport team, even if one managed to obtain some 7 luminaries crystals, the crystals would not reach their intended destination. Many of the transport teams Shifeng led in the past, which carried 7 luminaries crystals, had been robbed by Tier 4 and Tier 5 NPCs. He had to admit that this was the pitiful aspect of small guilds. This was also precisely the reason why Apex experts had gained importance in the past, and why nurturing Apex experts became essential for the various large guilds. Following which, Shifeng chose to activate his mind space. The instant he activated his mind space, the massive stone doors began shattering. Chunks of stone fell one after another, revealing bronze metal behind them. When all the stone was gone, a set of bronze doors had replaced the set of stone doors. Meanwhile, the divine runes carved on the doors began radiating a faint golden glow. Immediately after, a change occurred to the system interface. Owner Yifeng. Mind space, active. Space level, bronze, 3,000 units of 7 luminaries crystals will be required to upgrade to secret silver rank. Space size, 0. Every additional cubic meter will require 1 unit of 7 luminaries crystals. 7 luminaries crystals, 0. After scanning, it is discovered that you have no 7 luminaries crystals in your private space. After taking a glance at the interface, Shifeng promptly chose to enter God's domain. Although his mind space was already active, without any 7 luminaries crystals, it was equivalent to non-existent. Currently, what he needed to do was gather 7 luminaries crystals and deliver it to his private space. In God's domain, aside from lacking powerful experts, another aspect where small guilds were inferior to large guilds was the amount of land they owned. As 7 luminaries crystals could be stored only in one's private space, the more land one possessed, the easier it would be to transport the crystals. However, the main god system had also implemented a corresponding restriction to this matter. For bronze spaces, the private spaces they were bound to in God's domain could be changed only once every 20 days. This prevented guilds that possessed a large number of lands from gaining too great an advantage. When Shifeng entered the game, he found himself alone inside the armory. Nobody else had logged back into the game yet. He expected that the others were taking a look at the officially activated mind space system. With all the traps in the armory disabled, Shifeng walked straight to the stone altar. Previously, Fire Dance had managed to disable the master trap only at the very last second. Everyone was forcibly logged out of the game before they could even get a glimpse at what was on the stone altar. Shifeng was very curious to find out what exactly the trap had been protecting. Despite the rarity of master traps even in the inner area of the Fallen Ark, they actually found one in the armory located in the Ark's outer area. Without a doubt, the item on the altar was extraordinary. Walking forward, Shifeng sent a glance at the altar. Nothing particularly remarkable lay on the altar, only a glass bottle and some scattered designs covered in dust. Following which, Shifeng blew away the dust and carefully held up the glass bottle and designs. He was immediately stunned by what he saw. A small sailboat? Shifeng could not believe his eyes right now. In God's domain, speedboats were mainly meant for individual players. A small sailboat, on the other hand, was intended for teams. A bronze small sailboat was even more valuable than the Swift Dragon speedboat. In terms of maritime combat power, the small sailboat was far superior. Meanwhile, the small sailboat before him was mysterious iron rank. Chapter 1136 High-End Building. Chapter 1136, High-End Building. Hellscythe _ Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1136, High-End Building. Sherfone was dazed as he stared at the ancient bottle in his hand. He had to admit that time could erode everything. The glass bottle storing the small sailboat was extremely high quality, crafted of epic ranked materials. However, the bottle had been in this armory since the Great Ancient War. After so much time, even epic materials would start to disintegrate. As a result, Sherfone could only see the small sailboat's information. He couldn't actually use it. Hurricane sailboat, small sailboat, mysterious iron rank. Maximum capacity, 150 people. Durability 1000/1000. Item storage when liberated, 8,000 bag space slots and 100 non-bag space slots. Additional active skill 1-. Triple shield, absorbs up to 1,300,000 damage for 5 minutes. Cooldown, 15 minutes. Additional active skill 2-. Double destruction cannon, 2,000 yard range. Deals divine damage to a radius of 20 yards. Cooldown, 1 minute. 4 cannons are currently equipped. Up to 6 cannons can be equipped. Additional active skill 3-. Hurricane Frost Field, reduce the movement speed of all lifeforms and objects outside of the hurricane sailboat within a radius of 200 yards for 4 minutes. Cooldown, 30 minutes. Each activation costs 60 magic crystals. Additional active skill 4-. Mana Conversion, converts mana into motion, increasing movement speed by 40%. Every 10 magic crystals consumed extends duration by 20 minutes. Cooldown, 10 minutes. Additional passive skill -. Braving the winds and waves, when sailing with the wind, movement speed increased by 50%. When sailing against the wind, movement speed is unaffected. The hurricane sailboat has been severely damaged and cannot be used. Must repair the boat's divine ruins before use. It seems I'll have to get Burning Abyss to fix it. Sherfone sighed as he stored the hurricane sailboat. The hurricane sailboat was no less valuable than a fragmented legendary item. It was even more valuable than the Swift Dragon speedboat. The sailboat was especially valuable right now. Sailboats were very large. Not only could they participate in naval combat, but they were also transportation tools. Transporting cargo overseas was much faster and more convenient than on land. More importantly, transportation across the sea was much safer. This was especially true for the current God's domain. Naval combat was different from combat on land. While players' role in these battles was important, the ship they used was the more so. In God's domain, a mysterious iron small sailboat combat power made it practically invincible among current guilds. The sailboat could even deal with troublesome sea monsters. After storing the hurricane sailboat, Sherfone shifted his gaze towards the designs. Although the designs were somewhat damaged due to the passing of time, Sherfone could discern their information. 4 towers of elements. When Sherfone saw these words, he froze. So, this is the famous 4 towers of elements. Sherfang's eyes glowed with excitement as he examined the designs, nearly losing his grip on the papers. While the 4 towers of elements names seemed ordinary, in the various libraries around God's domain, it was also known as the Elemental Towers. The 4 towers of elements was a defensive structure that combined 4 towers that harnessed the power of the 4 major elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. If the Mana Tower was considered a mainstream defensive building, the 4 towers of elements was a high-end defensive building. However, in the past, he had only seen these towers in Super Guild's main headquarters. He had never heard of a lesser guild owning one. In fact, only super guilds had known where to obtain them. However, looking back at it now, Sherfone felt that those super guilds might have obtained the designs in the fallen Arkansas. Either that, or the Midnight Tea Party had sold the designs to super guilds after obtaining them. Otherwise, the 4 towers of elements would not have been so rare in the past. Sherfone finally understood why the main god system had activated the mind space system. It turned out that it was because he was about to obtain the 4 towers of elements. As a high-end building, ordinary players could not construct the 4 towers of elements. Only those who had learned the relevant subclasses could build them. Moreover, the relevant subclass requirements were exceptionally high. At the very least, one needed to reach the advanced rank. With this, I won't have any issues defending the city. Sherfone could not help but grin at the designs. There were a total of 4 designs, the complete design for the 4 towers of elements. With these designs, in addition to the lifestyle players the Candlelight trading firm had already nurtured, he could definitely construct the towers. Thinking up to this point, Sherfone began reading the list of required construction materials. This way, he could prepare. What? These towers require 7 luminaries crystals? Sherfone grew somewhat faint after glancing through the materials. If the towers simply needed a few 7 luminaries crystals, he could have dealt with that. However, each tower required 10 units of 7 luminaries crystal. Constructing the entire set would cost him 40 units of 7 luminaries crystal. Constructing these 4 towers cost more than constructing an entire city. In God's domain, 1 unit of 7 luminaries crystal was roughly the size of an adult's fist. Generally, one only came across 0. 1 to 0. 3 units of a 7 luminaries crystal. 1/10 of a 7 luminaries crystal would sell to NPC merchants for around 300 to 400 gold. If sold to players, some had even offered 1,000 gold in the past. However, even at such a price, nobody had been willing to sell their crystals. If Sherfone invested 40 units in his own mind space, he could increase it by 40 cubic meters. This was enough space for one person to live in. Even though he knew of many areas where he could collect 7 luminaries crystals right now, collecting so many in such a short time wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, Fire Dance came online. When she noticed Sherfeng's sour expression, she asked curiously, "Guild leader, what's wrong?" "It's nothing," Sherfeng said, shaking his head. He had no intentions of revealing the 4 towers of elements. The 4 towers of elements were of the utmost importance. There wasn't much benefit in revealing the information. Rather than letting everyone worry about the matter, it was better that they focus on what they needed to do right now. Shortly after, Aqua Rose also logged in. Immediately, she turned to Sherfeng and asked anxiously, "Guild leader, what was on the stone altar?" "A small sailboat," Sherfeng said. He then shared the Hurricane sailboat's information in the team chat for everyone to see. Those that had just come online and saw the Hurricane sailboat's information were stupefied. Although they weren't very familiar with naval matters, they could, more or less, tell how powerful the Hurricane sailboat was by its skills. The Hurricane sailboat was practically a moving turret. If the 4 double destruction cannons were lined up and fired together, their killing power would be absolutely terrifying. If the Hurricane sailboat could be used on land, it would be invincible, not to mention at sea. "Guild leader, with this sailboat, we can start developing in a coastal city. With this sailboat and our resources, we'll definitely get our own share of the pie," Gentle Snow suggested after reading the Hurricane sailboat's details. "That's right. Guild leader, the various large guilds have already secured most of the available resources on land. We have to waste a lot of time and effort to contest for those resources. We might as well shift a portion of our focus to the sea. There are not many cities out at sea, so the various guilds are slow in developing their maritime strength. There are still a lot of locations free of guilds' control. With this small sailboat, we can definitely compete with the guilds current in coastal cities." Aqua Rose very much agreed with Gentle Snow's proposal. Both Aqua Rose and Gentle Snow were members of the guild's management team. They possessed far more information than others. The two of them had also considered the problem of the guild's future development. There were simply too few resources available on land, and it was time-consuming to contest for more. As for the sea, not only were its resources abundant, but the majority of the various large guilds in God's domain were in the same situation as Zero Wing when it came to competition at sea. Most guilds were just starting to move towards the ocean at this stage of the game. One could say that they were all at the same starting point right now. Zero Wing's acquisition of the mysterious iron small sailboat gave it a significant advantage over the other guilds. Zero Wing could easily suppress their competition's fishing boats and speedboats. Chapter 1137 Introducing the Inferior Legendary Treasure Chest. Chapter 1137 Introducing the Inferior Legendary Treasure Chest. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 1137 Introducing the Inferior Legendary Treasure Chest. In the canyon outside of the Fallen Ark, the Soul Eater Lord, which had previously attacked Zero Wing's team, finally emerged. Immediately, the Soul Eater Lord's powerful domain enveloped a significant portion of the canyon. How is there such a powerful monster? The sight of the Soul Eater Lord instilled fear and insecurity into the Midnight Tea Party's members. They had listened to Shifeng's instructions and moved 1,000 yards away from the Ark, which put them outside of the Soul Eater Lord's domain. However, as experts, their senses were far superior to ordinary players. In addition, they normally fought high-tiered monsters. As a result, they could roughly gauge a monster's strength based on the pressure it emitted. Meanwhile, right now, from the pressure they felt from the Soul Eater Lord, they could tell that he was the strongest monster they had encountered since joining God's domain. Black Flame really didn't lie. Even if every member in the team has reached Tier 2, level 60, we'll still be cannon fodder against such a powerful monster, Netherworld Wave said, finding it somewhat difficult to breathe. Even Tier 4 NPCs of the same level wouldn't be a match for the Tier 4, level 67 mythic monster with a complete domain. After all, complete domains were what made Tier 4 NPCs so powerful and allowed them to fight mythic monsters, which had higher attributes, on equal footing. Leader, are we still going to go in? Cloud Yarn asked Breezewine worriedly. With such powerful monsters guarding the Fallen Ark, even sending in an army of tens of thousands of players of the same level would be meaningless. They were significantly underleveled right now. Let's wait for a bit, Breezewine said softly. Black Flame told us his method for luring these monsters away. Let's make our decision after watching the situation. After Breezewine announced his decision, the team fell silent. It would be a pity to simply leave after so much difficulty to open the Fallen Arkansas. While the Midnight Tea Party members waited quietly, one monster after another exited the Fallen Arkansas. The weakest among them was a Grand Lord, while most were mythic monsters. The adventurer team counted 20 mythic monsters leaving the Arkansas. Watching this, the Midnight Tea Party members, who had experienced hundreds of challenging battles, shuddered. If not for the monsters' low levels, they could have easily obliterated numerous major NPC cities if they worked together. Even at level 60, players would be cannon fodder in front of these monsters. It did not matter how many players fought them. Everyone that tried to do so would undoubtedly die. If not for their quest's time limit and severe penalty for failure, the Midnight Tea Party members would have fled. Leader, look! They seem to have discovered something. The Ranger, Dark War, reported softly. Everyone followed Dark War's gaze, and indeed, one mythic monster in the distant forest sniffed the air as if it had scented something. Suddenly, the mythic monster roared, and the rest gathered to its location. The Midnight Tea Party members began to panic. They couldn't have discovered us, right? Cloud Yarn asked anxiously. If these monsters discovered them, their deaths were certain. That shouldn't be the case. Black Flame had returned from that direction. He should have set up some sort of luring magic array there. Endless Scars calmly explained. As soon as Endless Scars said so, the abyssal monsters began to rush elsewhere. Very quickly, they disappeared from the Midnight Tea Party's sight. They're gone? Everyone could not help but release a sigh of relief. A few of the team members, who had expressed their discontent with Shifeng, began to view the swordsman in a new light. Although Shifeng was ridiculously greedy, they had to admit that if not for him, they would have been unable to enter the Fallen Ark for a long time. We have our chance. Let's hurry and enter the Ark! Breezewine shouted as he stood. Now that the monsters were nowhere to be seen, they could sneak into the Ark undetected. Once they were inside, things would become much easier. It seems that I'll have to learn more about this guild leader of Zero Wing. Endless Scars revealed a faint smile as she looked to where the monsters had flown. Even super guilds knew little about the secret of the Fallen Arkansas. She had searched everywhere for information, even utilizing the Blackwater Corporation's power, to grasp the little she had learned about the Arkansas. And yet, the guild leader of a newly developed guild knew far more about the fallen Ark than she did. One could see just how extraordinary Sherfone was. Zero Wing was definitely not as simple as she had imagined. As the abyssal monsters moved away from the fallen Ark, Sherfone led the Zero Wing team to the Ark's inner region. He had finally made it into the fallen Ark after so much trouble. He could not simply leave after looting a single armory. Furthermore, the fallen Ark's truly valuable items lay in the inner region. However, as they ventured deeper, they encountered many traps. Even after the traps were disabled, new traps appeared in their place after a certain amount of time. In addition, due to the recent system update, the traps had become far more difficult and risky to disable. Any mistake could trigger the traps. It might be fine if it were weak, as triggering the trap wouldn't result in an instant death. However, if they triggered a stronger trap, it could result in a team wipe. As a result, Sherfeng's group progressed very slowly through the Arkansas. Fortunately, Sherfeng had the fallen Ark map. The map depicted which areas within the Ark were riddled with traps and which were not. Not only could they choose the safest path, but they would also know if they were about to walk into one. They didn't need to be on high alert constantly. Finally, after over an hour advancing through the Ark, the team reached the inner region. Following which, Sherfeng had everyone stand by and wait for orders as traps riddled this area. Their only option was to let Fire Dance explore. As Fire Dance still held the Icarus's heart Sherfeng had given her, she could explore the inner region somewhat safely. Anyone else that tried to do so would only be looking to die. Fortunately, we dealt with the traps in the armory before the system update began. Otherwise, the stone altar's trap would have killed us already, Flying Shadow said, his heart fluttering with fear. Previously, when he had disabled an advanced trap, he had very nearly lost his life when he triggered the trap by mistake. Fortunately, Violet Cloud had reacted quickly and immediately cast Truth's shield on him. In the end, the trap had only wounded him, leaving him with only 2,000 HP. That's right! Guild Leader is really amazing! If not for sensing that the system update would affect traps, we wouldn't have obtained the Hurricane sailboat, Cola said, laughing. Sherfeng hadn't expected to acquire the Hurricane sailboat either. However, he agreed with Gentle Snow and Aqua Rose's suggestion. Hence, he made some slight adjustments to his plans. Before obtaining the Hurricane sailboat, Sherfeng had planned to develop an ocean-viewing town slowly. He had even intended to let Immortal Light develop in the Apocalypse Empire's coastal towns. After all, Zero Wing was different from the other guilds in coastal cities, where the latter had already begun to build their strength. Trying to compete with these coastal guilds would be foolish. Even if Zero Wing were far stronger than these guilds, naval combat relied on the ship's quality, rather than players. Zero Wing would not have much of an advantage by relying on the Swift Dragon speedboat. Coastal cities were very different from coastal towns. Coastal cities possessed large shipyards. They also had plenty of high-ranking rare quests that could help players to obtain powerful ships. Otherwise, Phoenix Rain, the pavilion master of a super first-rate guild, would not have bothered cooperating with a first-rate guild like Firmament. She had done so because Firmament had taken over a major NPC coastal city very early in the game. Even some super guilds feared its strength at sea. Hence, Sherfeng now planned to occupy a major NPC coastal city. Guild Leader, I discovered a forging hall. I can see an inferior legendary treasure chest inside the hall, Fire Dance excitedly announced in the team chat. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.